of the City of St. Pete Beach Commission meeting. It is 6 p.m. And let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, would you please do a roll call?
Vice Mayor Grill.
Here.
Commissioner Frislowski.
Here.
Commissioner Marone.
Here.
Commissioner Grouse.
Here.
Mayor Petrilla.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, and we're going to start with a presentation of the City of St. Pete Beach Financial Audit Report. Thank you, Vince.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to start it off with just a few slides, and then Zach Chalifour will follow up with the audit opinion presentation. I do have, here we go, just a couple of quick slides I want to run over. Obviously, this is a lot of information to digest in a short period of time, so know a couple of things. One, that much of the narrative throughout this document has been shared with the City Commission at multiple different stops along the way of the Budget and Finance annual calendar. So this concludes fiscal year 22, but you've heard this message from me now at various budget workshops, at the annual reappropriation ordinance. This is sort of the final stop, but the message is the same. And so really for tonight's purpose, I just want to sort of reiterate what I would call the sort of the storyline of the fiscal 22 budget, and importantly let you know if anything has changed since our last conversation. So with that said, just a couple of key takeaways. Change in net position is essentially equivalent to, on a personal basis, your increase or decrease in net worth. Sort of gives an indication as to whether the city is better off or worse off as a result of its financial operations over the course of the year. And for fiscal year 22, the city's net position increased by $12.3 million. On a percentage basis, that's 13.1%. Similar to last year. It was down a little bit due to pension expense, and I'll explain that here shortly. But on each of these slides, you'll see a chart over a 10-year period, and really the story I'm trying to paint here is that over the past 10 years, the city's financial position has improved tremendously. The city's in a great financial position as of September 30th, and this chart, among others, indicates that. So to the extent that you see those red and blue lines diverge, it means the city is better off financially. The red line refers to net program expenses. So most of our government services we do expect will have net expenses. We don't expect to make money on government services. That's why we have taxes. And so the difference between those two lines, the blue line refers to general revenues, which means taxes of various sorts that are intended to cover the cost of our operations. So again, bottom line is a $12.3 million increase in net position. And so I'll just summarize broadly the main drivers of that. The favorable contributions came from, first and foremost, the ARPA fund. So this is the American Rescue Plan Act. This is the federal COVID relief money. $4.8 million was reported in fiscal 22. Virtually all of that remains unspent. We have spent, I would say, $90,000 to date on that. That was for wages as a result of our CWA contract. And so essentially $4.7 million that drops down right to the bottom line. We had record level sales tax receipts. You would have heard me make a couple of comments to this at various budget workshops and other budget meetings. So the initial impact from an inflationary environment is higher sales tax receipts. Ultimately, and depending on how long that lasts, you would expect that it would have an impact on demand, and then it would go the other way. But at least the initial impact of higher prices is higher sales taxes that are based on those higher prices. We had plan review fees in excess of $1 million. That was primarily a result of 2 commercial projects. And parking revenue was up $600,000 year over year. The chart here shows parking revenue history over the past 10 years, which is just moved favorably in an exponential fashion based on a number of factors. So based on tourism activity, visitors coming to the city, better technology, better enforcement, higher rates, literally all of those have contributed to that. And parking was up by $600,000. And finally, property values were up 5.3%, so that was that provided approximately $500,000 in new revenue year over year. And on the unfavorable side, first and foremost is pension expense. So the markets experienced broad declines over the course of the fiscal year, and so as a result of that, we had an increase in pension expense of $1.5 million. I'm going to elaborate on that on the next couple of slides, but I want to mention a couple other things here real quick. So building division expenses were up by $500,000. It may sound concerning on the face of it, but it's really in line with expectations. So as building permit fees are collected, the city has to essentially staff up for more inspections to basically maintain customer service in the community development department. And so it's sort of an expected dynamic there, is that you sort of have a spike in building permit revenue followed by gradual increases in expenses. And so that's exactly what we had. And finally, we had an increase in sheriff's office expenses, primarily because we added a community policing deputy. They had startup costs built into that arrangement. Their fees were also up, so all of those led to an increase of $200,000 in the sheriff's office. Okay, so let me pause here real quick on the pension topic, and Zach is going to mention some of this as well. So I'm going to take a closer look at this chart here on the right of the slide. So for each of our 3 defined benefit pension plans, we have an assumed rate of return that each of those plans is based on. Those rates have come down over the years. Historically, they were more 7.75 to 8%. So the rates have been reduced by the respective pension boards over the last few years. But on 2 different measures, whether it's on the actuarial basis or the accounting basis, we fell well short of the assumed rate of return. You don't really need to know the specifics of this, but it is important in terms of the way it affected this current report. So the actuarially required contribution is derived from what we refer to as a smooth investment return rate. So depending on the plan, it's either smoothed over 4 or 5 years, and the intent of that is to reduce some of the volatility. And so when we're making contributions into the pension plan, these are expected to be long-term types of obligations. We're drawing down the liability over a long period of time. So the intent of the smoothing technique is to reduce the volatility on the budget, and that's common practice, that's industry standard. There's nothing unique about that to St. Pete Beach. But that middle column refers to what would be the smooth rate of return. And the far right column is really what's important as it pertains to this particular report. Over the last couple of years, the Government Accounting Standards Board has issued new reporting requirements that require us to mark the net pension liability to market on September 30th, 2022. That was not historically the case. And so it happens to be the case that investment returns as of September 30th, 2022 were terrible. That was, again, not unique to St. Pete Beach. The market, in terms of both fixed income and equities, was down considerably over the year, and so this was the result. And because of that, and so anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that because of the 1-year investment return performance, pension expense increased by $1.5 million. And I've got a separate slide I want to show on that. Ryan, if you can hear me, I'd like to pull up that separate slide, please. So,
Oh, yeah.
this chart here, it might look a little intimidating, but what it's showing, the red dot refers to the lowest point in the year during this historic period for S&P 500 returns. And so you see there it ranges from negative 17% to the left to negative 25% to the right. The red dot refers to the lowest point during the year. The blue graph refers to the actual annual return during that period. And so what this chart is showing is that historically the year doesn't end at the sharpest low point, but it did this past year. So all this is trying to show is that not only was the investment landscape terrible, the timing was also terrible. So as of September 30th, we're reporting at the actual low point of the year. So just keep all that in mind. Yes, the results are bad, and yes, they're bad on a mark-to-market basis, but everything in our pension world is long-term. The pensions are managed on a long-term basis. And the city has taken bold steps, I would say, to reduce the net pension liabilities. So we have funded the police pension liability. We have closed the traditional general employees pension. And at the next commission meeting, or probably the next commission meeting, I'll be bringing forward authorization to close the fire pension and move employees to the state Florida retirement system. So to the extent that the city controls any of these factors, we have taken great strides to minimize the city's exposure to any of these major issues.
And I would assume, Vince, if you would put another bar, which you don't, but 6 months later, to the right, we'd be looking a lot different.
Correct.
If you just want to look at a snapshot. That's why we look on
Correct.
long term, because of the fluctuation.
Generally speaking, we're up, 10%, since that time. So,
Thank you.
and so, last point I want to make, if we go back to the original slide. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Perfect. So, yeah, those are some of the, major issues to kind of be aware of as it pertains to the city's financial operations in fiscal 22. This here is the bottom line, and just kind of want to, again, the question would be at this point, were there any surprises during the annual audit process? My answer to that, strictly from the financial standpoint, would be no. We brought forward Ordinance 2023-01 to you in January, which is the annual reappropriation ordinance. Basically, that is what I would call kind of the soft close of the year. We basically take a snapshot of our financial position at that date, and we honor existing encumbrances that are rolled forward from one year to the next. We reappropriate fund balance if there's projects that require additional funding, and so we did that already in January. And so my job today is to let you know, were we off base? Did we make any, were there any issues that came up during the audit process that we didn't know back then? There were two changes, and roughly speaking, pretty minor in nature and both favorable. So, positive change in the general fund of $30,000, equivalent amount in the wastewater fund. The specifics on that: so we had sold some assets that we initially recorded in the general fund, should have been recorded in the wastewater fund. So that was a late change. That explains the $30,000 in the wastewater fund. And then in the general fund, just before publishing the reappropriation ordinance, we were trying to catch some invoices that had been disputed, and we did that on a manual basis. Ended up recording it twice just because of the sort of manual nature of that process. And the result of that was a correction, a net change of $30,000 in the general fund. So by and large, essentially equivalent financial position to where we were last time, and the only changes are favorable in nature. And then finally, this last chart on the right, this would probably be, of most interest if anybody's looking at, sort of most readily available sources of funds that the city has at any given time. I would refer them to assigned and unassigned balances. These are the balances that have been addressed by the city's fund balance policy. So we have a couple of specific types of reserves that we're trying to provide in those balances. One is we're trying to keep the city in a resilient financial position for the sake of responding to hurricanes and that type of thing. The other is we're trying to maintain financial flexibility, so that examples of financial needs along those lines would be if there was a property that came online for purchase that the city was interested in, we would want to have funds readily available for expenditure that might not be budgeted. If the investment landscape, again, changes dramatically to where there's an obvious buying opportunity, to where the city might want to invest funds in the pension system that might not otherwise be budgeted, we'd want to use those funds. So just a couple of examples as to how and why those funds might be used. And importantly, if, or maybe I should say when, the economy turns around, things have been great economically for a long time, or at least for these 10 years, I should say, COVID notwithstanding. If the environment does change economically, the city's in a good position to support its operations financially. So that's the extent, of my part of this. Like I said, most of this should be pretty familiar conversation. I've mentioned these changes a number of times, and importantly, no major issues financially came up during the process that would have been, that would change anything that we've done to this point financially. So I will pause. I'll let Zach jump in, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. All right, and we have another PowerPoint I think we'll be switching to. But good evening, Zach Shalafor, partner, James Moore & Company. There we go. So we have our presentation to kind of review the overall audit results, some of our high-level financial thoughts, again, many of which will echo what Vince went through. First and foremost, as always, thank you to the Commission for the opportunity to continue working with the city. A big thank you as well to Vince, Sheila, and the rest of the finance team for all their work through the process. There's a lot that goes into the audit every year, and this document in terms of the financial statements, which I'll start really by highlighting and just putting out there again that the city does prepare what's called an ACFR now, or an Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, as has been the case in past years as well. This document ultimately has a few additional components, additional budgetary schedules, what we call the statistical section in the very back, that are what kind of go above and beyond the minimum reporting requirements set forth by the state. Every year that this document is sent to the Government Finance Officers Association, basically for evaluation of the city's compliance with the program. So for last year's document, it was awarded the GFOA Certificate of Achievement in regards to meeting all of the requirements of this program. We expect to see that again for this year. And it's also of note that your finance team prepares the entire document. We basically provide our reports to go into that. The majority of clients we assist just due to kind of ease. We've got software for it, but there's very few clients that we work with that are fully capable and take on that full responsibility of preparing all of the final statements and notes that go into this document, kind of in the GAAP compliance perspective to meet all of those requirements. So as I mentioned, we provide audit reports. This year there were 5 audit reports that really summarize the results of the audit. The first one is the audit report on the financial statements themselves. This one shows up at the very front of the document and really gets towards kind of the main focus of the audit, which is to express an opinion on the city's financial statements, effectively kind of answering the question of, can these numbers be relied upon when it comes to making decisions about your future budget, or otherwise, again, kind of as you plan and strategize, what should the reserve policy be, where are we at going forward, what do we do about the pensions, so on and so on. We did issue an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that we can issue, that does state that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. This year also we did perform a federal and state single audit. This is where if you're federal grant funds, ARPA, CARES Act in the past, or state grants, generally there, state revolving fund loans for utility projects. If those expenditures are over $750,000 in a fiscal year, we additionally have to perform, again, what's called a single audit. Effectively, it's a mini compliance-oriented audit, kind of a totally separate focused engagement where we look at the expenditures under those major grant programs to determine whether or not, in our opinion, the city was in compliance. We did note there the city to be in compliance with those major grant programs for the current fiscal year. The third, so that one only shows up when the city kind of triggers that threshold. The third one, and the rest of them are here every year based on state requirements. So the third one is looking at internal control and compliance. And what this is we also perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards, where while the audit is not designed to audit the internal controls of the city or express an opinion,
on the internal controls of the city. If in our testing of financial balances and activity, we came across any deficiencies, either in terms of a poorly designed internal control that is not functioning well, or any other kind of overrides, issues like that that came to light, those would get reported in this letter, as well as any compliance matters looking at budgetary compliance, debt compliance, or any grant compliance outside the scope of the single audit. Again, not the focus of the audit, but if in performing the financial audit procedures anything came to our attention, that would be reported here. There were no such items noted. The fourth report is a management letter required by the Florida Auditor General. I kind of call it the catch-all report for anything else the state wants us to report back on. The main focus here is on financial condition, where if there were any red flags the city triggered or anything else, we would have to notify the state. As Vince highlighted, and we'll get to, definitely no issues from a financial health perspective, so no modifications there. The only items that we did have is there's just any other comments, recommendation standpoint in terms of what we come across in our testing. It's a chance to include that in this report. There were 2 items noted in that report this year. The first related to building department fund balances. While those are restricted, effectively any building department permitting revenues that the city generates can only be used to manage your building department. About 4 years ago or so, the state set a limitation on how much you can carry forward in this fund balance, so the city is a little bit over that threshold. So ultimately, we're just communicating that and ensuring that everyone's aware when it comes to future budget planning. It is a tricky one because it's, as Vince talked about, your building department activity can vary from year to year. So trying to match those revenues and expenses and ensuring you've kind of got everything lined up can be a little bit trickier versus saying, okay, what's our fire budget or other departmental budgets that you've got a little more kind of control and expectation over. The second one related to purchasing card testing. In some of our testing, we looked at purchasing card transactions, basically just a recommendation to enhance some of the documentation requirements, where there were some instances where the documentation did not clearly indicate, okay, what was this for, what was the business purpose of that transaction. So really they're just saying, hey, here's an opportunity to tighten up that process. And then our final report, we have to look at the city's compliance with state statutes over investment activity and investment policies, and there we did note the city, in our opinion, to be in compliance with that statute. So to highlight the numbers, this is the last 4 years of that fund balance graph, pretty much that Vince showed. Your fund balance in the general fund is broken into a few different buckets. The non-spendable is any prepaid items. So generally the big one here is prepaid insurance, where once that cash has gone out the door, it's for the next fiscal year, so it still shows as an asset, but you can't go spend it on something else. The restricted fund balance, the bulk here is the residual amounts from the police pension debt issued a couple years ago. So that being tied up for that purpose shows up here as restricted. Nothing met the committed classification. The assigned is primarily that fund balance reserve policy, a little bit over $10 million there. So that shows up because it has been earmarked for that specific reserve use based on that policy. And then the unassigned represents basically just what's left over once we back out all of those other classifications. So looking at the assigned and unassigned, and here's really kind of what ties into the numbers on the graph that Vince presented. And what I always like to do is say, okay, if we take that total combined reserve, compare it to what you spent, where are you at in terms of a percentage? This year, about 57%, about 7 months in reserves. The GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, recommends a bare minimum of 2 months when you look at this measurement, and kind of says, consider external factors such as hurricane vulnerability, things like that, and saying should it be higher, which is really what you all have done with that policy, where you have kind of that explicit assignment, and then really that assigned fund balance after that intentional policy is about $3 million. So really, largely, this just demonstrates that that policy is very much in compliance, and again, helps protect and limit the exposure to, if there were ever a major hurricane impact, what would that look like? So the city does have some resources available to, again, be as resilient as possible, depending on the severity of any storms, but hopefully it's a moot point. We don't have to worry about that anytime soon. Looking at your proprietary funds, we have here your unrestricted net position. Really the focus here that we look at is just kind of what's the trend? Do we see any downward trends or otherwise, to then kind of prompt a question of, okay, are the rates at a good spot relative to expenses? So there were a couple, every fund here did decrease a little bit larger in wastewater and reclaimed water, but as we kind of look at, the bulk of those were due to capital investments in the year, as well as the next slide, the pension liability and that pension expense Vince talked about did impact these funds as well to kind of drive some of that down. So as we look at it, no real red flags, and we look kind of purely at the operations of those funds and are they generating cash year over year. So to jump into pensions, the way we kind of look at it, where we like to highlight just what was that unfunded or net pension liability that shows up in your financial statements. That was about $18.5 million this year versus about $7 million last year, and then those funded percentages showing up on the right side. As Vince mentioned, and again, this is the at this point in time. So when it comes to funding, everything is smoothed based on the actuaries. But this just shows where were you at this point in time. So the 15 to 20% decreases, common with kind of what we're seeing across the board. Again, just a byproduct of that one bad investment year. But hopefully we have another good 6 months and those percentages start to move pretty substantially the other way. I always kind of say, you're never as good as you look, you're never as bad as you look, and it's really about making the right decisions in terms of saying, where are we going the next 10, 20 years? And I think the city's absolutely been doing that, looking at where's each plan, what do we close, move to FRS, and again, kind of limiting some of that exposure, because in FRS, you're part of a giant pool where your contribution rate can vary year over year, but you don't have to worry about the potential more extreme fluctuations that you could see with your own pension plans. And then lastly, I added this a couple of years ago, just looking at what were those assumed rates of return of your plans relative to FRS. This was kind of started by a number of years ago, sharing that the rates for some of your plans were a little bit high in comparison. As you can see, those rates have been coming down. Again, the lower those assumed rates of return, the lesser any potential exposure of the city to if there's any sustained time period of those investment assumptions not being met and what that impact could be on future contributions. So with that covers the highlights. I would be more than glad to dive into anything deeper or answer any questions.
No. Going to start, or?
You have the big binder.
I have I read it. Vince knows. No, look, thanks for the presentation, Vince. Thanks for all the hard work. I mean, for those who don't know, it is no small task to put a document like this together. And Vince and Sheila and the team, I think, have done an outstanding job in putting this together. There's a couple ways as we look at these reports. I mean, first off, also congratulations winning this award again for excellence in financial reporting. I know some people are looking here going, boy, this has been the most boring half hour of any commission meeting I've been at in a long time. And I will tell you, that's a good thing, because we have unmodified opinions. I mean, basically, we have a very clean bill of health from a financial perspective, from the accounts, and that's a good thing, because if you think about what could happen with the opposite, that would not be a very good thing. So I really want to commend Vince and the team, not only for putting the report together, but of course keeping us all, remember, all of this is a culmination of work from 1 year, but over a period of time where the city staff keeps us on the straight and narrow financially. We have debates all the time over how much should we spend on this, how much should we spend on that, and that's fine, but we also have a responsibility to report this to you, the residents, to the state, to the financial institutions, that things are as we say they are. So, unmodified opinion, boring section, good thing. The other thing for those, and yes, I have lots of tabs in here, and I think I may have mentioned this in previous years, in the back of the report, the additional information that is not required in a financial report, there's a number of schedules in here at the back that really give you an overview of the city over 10 years. And even with the pension liability, the pension chart and the rates of return that Vince was showing, you really have to look at things over a period of time. So if you want to learn about the city, and Okay, skip the beginning, sorry, Zach, but skip the beginning section, look at the back sections, because it talks about millage rates, it talks about who are our largest taxpayers, our largest employers, and a number of other interesting information. And then on Thursdays, we can all go to Masteries and play Trivial Pursuit. No, just kidding. When they ask the St. Pete Beach questions. So I think it's a really good report. For my colleagues, they'll be open. I mean, Zach and I have had a discussion earlier today. There are some things that I had asked the audit team to look at. They're not, they don't affect the numbers in the report. I'm comfortable in what's here in this report, but there's some other things that I guess we can take them offline after the meeting or later in the week that I'd like to discuss that didn't get, to me, didn't get closed out before this review. So with that, turn it over.
Just a couple of comments, not really questions, but thank you for the audit, and I want to thank our city manager and assistant city manager for the good financial picture. I think we're fortunate, as Commissioner Grill mentioned. Of course, times aren't always this good. There were times when it was a lot tougher back 10 years ago, so grateful for where we're at. There is a wealth of information in this, so anybody who wants a really good novel to read, it's really a great book to just unbelievable amount of information, so thank you.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, there's no action needed. State law only requires that they present the information to the commission, but there's no action needed, so thank you.
Thank you.
And no pending questions for our presenter. Right? I didn't know if you had questions to
I
follow.
do, but we'll take them offline. They're a bit more detailed than for this meeting.
Commissioner, did you have any questions?
I have none, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Al.
All right. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
I'd like to pull out consent item, well, there's only one consent item, but 4A, and make that a action item 5B. And the reason is I think we need to have some discussion. We've had discussion with residents, and I think it's a good opportunity for the city to explain that, because I think there's some confusion on that item at this point. And then the second item on the agenda, and I'll ask the city attorney if he can help me, because I've read the discussion item multiple times, and to be very frank, I don't understand this discussion item. Is it a discussion item or is it a motion? And normally a discussion item is not a motion, and I've read this a number of times, so if city attorney, if you can help me understand what exactly is happening in this section.
I think what's happening here is that there was an effort to put down in writing the motion that the mayor made at the last meeting verbally, and it was at the end of the meeting, and I think there was a request to have something in writing put into the agenda, and I guess that's the place that it was put. But typically, yes, you're right, from a parliamentary point of view, discussion item sections are for discussion, and if you want to take action, you usually put it in the action item section. So that's typically the way that you've done it. So I think that, and maybe the mayor wants to expound on this a little bit more, but I believe that there was a request, it might have been from Commissioner Roan, that to see in writing what was presented verbally. So I don't think there is, I don't think there's a motion. I think this is here for purposes of further discussion.
So my intent, when this was brought up by the mayor at the end of the meeting and appeared to be presented as a motion, that I thought it should be put on this agenda so that it be considered as a motion in its proper form, properly noticed, And that was my intent with that request, is that it actually be an action item, not just a discussion item, because we discussed it last time we were here, but took no action because it wasn't an action item that would be properly noticed, that the residents could have comments on. So that was the intention when I asked for that. And that's why I wanted it verbatim. I know we keep a record, but that's why I wanted it in here verbatim, so that we could have as an action item. So it says action request, but I guess it was, I requested it as an action item, and maybe I wasn't clear about it.
So I'm sorry, but I'm still not clear. Is there something we are going to vote on tonight, or something we're going to discuss tonight? Well, first we'll have a discussion. Is the intent then that this is a motion that's been properly noticed, or is it a discussion item?
Well, motions, you all can bring them up at any time. You do
We do, right.
not, I wouldn't say frequently, but it happens, and it's perfectly okay. If you wanted to, at this time, during discussion of the agenda, if you wanted to move this into the action item section of this, or leave it where it is and say that, is that the intent of the commissioner and the intent of the mayor to actually have this as a motion, or was it to have more discussion? Keeping in mind that we do have a workshop, a joint workshop on this topic in 2 weeks, and then following a city commission meeting as well. So I don't, so legally, procedurally, you can bring up motions verbally and or put them here. I think I understand what you're saying. It is a little confusing, and that's only because it just says action request, and there's, I think I asked myself that question too when I saw it, but this is the time to find out, because it's the only time you guys can talk together.
Right, and that's why I brought it up. I mean, I would say I don't care, whether it's called a discussion item or an action item.
Yeah.
What are we doing on this issue is
I think we have to ask the original maker of the motion, Mr. Mayor, do you want to have this as, take action on it, or you want to further discuss it, or you want to?
Yeah, I think it was, and then we also have the workshop coming up. Does that help, or?
Or better.
More better.
More better. So in other words, I think if I hear you correctly,
I mean, I would
depending
like-
on how the discussion goes,
Yeah.
you may you may put that on the table as a motion.
Yes, I mean, we can discuss it. I can make the motion. If somebody says, look, I think we should amend the motion in this way,
Okay.
that allows us to do that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay,
Procedurally all good?
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So,
Could we add, go ahead, sorry.
So you want to move the consent item A to items for discussion, or?
No, action item
Action
5B.
item, okay.
That's fine.
Could we add a discussion item about the freebie, if possible? I've had a lot of comments from residents, kind of about how we're using it and what the future of it might be, and how we might be able to improve it so that for the use of our residents. So we can have that as 6B.
6B.
Okay. If nothing else, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second. City Clerk, a roll call, please.
I'm sorry, was it Commissioner Frizowski, did you second?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Frizowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Marone,
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill,
Yes.
Mayor Petrola,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, so the first item is the Gulfway paving design.
Public comment, Mayor,
I'm sorry.
non-agenda item.
All right, audience comments.
Yes, okay, so the first person I have is Vince. I'm sorry, Vince, I can't read your last name. Vince? Okay, yes, so it's your turn. You can come forward.
I came to this meeting tonight to ask if you...
Sorry, can you please state your name?
Oh, Vincent Torminia. Hi.
An address?
And address.
I came tonight...
Your address?
...of what's going on with Citizens Insurance.
Vince, I'm sorry, your address, please.
Oh, 3514 Casablanca Avenue.
Thank you.
St. Pete Beach. I came tonight to ask if you guys could intervene and do something about with Citizens property insurance. They are inflating property values, they're raising rates, threatening letters canceling. They just had, 4 weeks ago, spent over $1 million at the Don Cesar Hotel for the weekend. Very nice, on our dime. They're also paying their adjusters 4 times the amount of a regular adjuster. They're just squandering money. I contacted Rubio's office. I contacted many government officials that I know and I'm involved with, and I was wondering if the city could do something behind me to help get this taken care of, because something must be done, because we don't really have options, and it's hurting a lot of residents, especially residents that are retired in condominiums. Their maintenance is going sky through the roof, from what I understand, from $45,000 to $156,000 they're paying for it. This is what Citizens is doing. So that's why I came here to ask tonight.
City Attorney, is this something the State Commission on Ethics might help if he has ethics concerns?
With regard to...
I heard squandering of money and, no.
Yeah, I mean, you can contact the Commission on Ethics. I mean,
I've contacted them. I've contacted a lot of people. I'm waiting to hear back on a lot of things, but this is affecting our city mostly. There's over 1,000 people that I know already that are affected by this.
okay.
And it's getting out of control. And there's no options.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, the only thing that I can suggest is that the insurance program is managed by the state. It is part of the Chief Financial Officer of the state. And maybe, reaching out to our state reps, those are the ones who really could have an influence on the insurance program. It is a statewide issue. I mean,
Yeah, it's not only us here, but we're getting hit hard here.
but it is outrageous. I mean, policies are doubling and tripling in prices from 1 minute to the next, with no explanation to people as to what has changed, and all of a sudden...
So I represented property insurance companies for 25 years, and I've been through all the statutory changes. I've been to Tallahassee. I know Barry Gilway, the head of Citizens, many people that work at Citizens. It is a very, very complicated set of problems that this state has. They're very well documented in Tallahassee. Statutory changes are being made. If you follow the property insurance saga, starting from Hurricane Andrew in 1992, taking it through the 2004-2005 hurricanes, and then no hurricanes for 10 years, and then sinkholes opening up in 3 counties, increasing rates of insurance rates, and then the statutory changes to sinkholes, dropping the rates after sinkhole rates and dropping sinkhole coverages after a 5-year period of that statute being in place, to now the changes in the assignment of benefits statute for...
But that's not my point. My point is
Well,
that they
it all
are
goes to rates.
squandering money.
Well, it all goes to...
They was on our dime. They were at the Don Cesar, over $1 million.
Okay, they're a public entity. You can see everybody's salary online. They have a board, an independent board in Tallahassee. And our local state representatives all have contact information for that independent board. And many, many property insurance, homeowner property insurance customers contact the state rep, who can contact board members who are completely independent from the folks that run Citizens, and they will take appropriate action if there is malfeasance
Oh, I
or
believe
fraud.
there is.
They have taken appropriate
Squandering
action
money left
before.
and right.
And they will do it. And I think that's probably the best path.
Who is our state rep, Chris, or Commissioner?
Linda Cheney, I think.
Right. I think that's who
Linda
we
Cheney.
got.
I've contacted her. She said she's looking into it, and she's seeing what she could do about it, too. Because it's
Your most direct line.
it's really unbelievable how they're just
That
squandering
is the
money.
Well, I think there's two issues. I mean, your comments on Citizen is one, but the entire insurance industry, to Commissioner Moreau's point, I think Citizens is a data, from a premium is a data point, and there's many other companies, I think many other people in the city are experiencing large increases. Forget the malfeasance that you think.
They went from the insurer of last resort to being the biggest insurer in the state of Florida, and close to the only insurer in the state of Florida for a while.
So the legislature passed in this session, a few bills, but we're supposed to, I mean, we're all policyholders. I'm waiting to see my policy, it impact my
The city
policy.
could do something like contact Linda Cheney's office, contact them up there, on behalf of the citizens here in St. Pete Beach, because we're being really targeted. And they're denying claims. And they're also giving, down south, from what I understand, in Fort Myers, where Ian hit, okay, they're giving their adjusters bonuses for denying claims. Okay?
So why don't we, I'll reach out to Representative Cheney.
Yeah, I did.
And
I
then-
spoke to her. I got
Okay.
her.
And I'll reach out to her as well.
Yeah, if you can, please. That's
Great.
what I'm asking for.
Thank you.
I'd like
You
to
know.
make a recommendation. I know they're in session right now, so obviously
Yeah,
Representative
May
Cheney
will
can't
be
be
over,
here.
and then you can't do anything after
But I
May.
would like to, as a commission, invite her to an upcoming commission meeting after session.
That would be
And we can
great.
go over multiple different issues, because there are many state issues that we're dealing with, not just insurance. I mean,
Well,
we
DeSantis
talked
said he was
before
going to clean
about
it up, and it hasn't been
speeding
cleaned up.
boats. There is-
Sweeping
we
They're
don't
still
wanna come
squandering,
with-
they're still squandering money all over the place, But I don't believe that their adjusters should be paid 4 times. They're no better than any other insurance company adjuster. either.
Right, but to Commissioner Frasowski's point, I mean, this is something, we talked about this in some months past, with the whole flood insurance discussion.
Yes.
I mean, there is an economic impact to the barrier islands. I mean, we're not alone in this. It's
Oh, I have a policy with them. I have wind.
Yeah.
And it says non-hurricane on there. So I contacted them. I'm paying very hefty for that wind policy, but if we have a hurricane, what's in a hurricane? Wind. I'm not covered if there's a hurricane.
I understand. yeah.
Yep.
So
So let's,
it's
think
just,
that's a good
it's a phony
recommendation.
policy to me. Something's got to be done, what they're doing to the citizens here.
I think that's a great recommendation. We'll
Yeah.
reach out to Representative Cheney and ask her when the session is over to stop by. I know she's always been more than happy
I
to stop by.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And we should probably get our list of topics, other than insurance,
I
too.
think maybe, could we put that as a just discussion item for an upcoming meeting about just different state issues? And then when we invite representatives, she could be prepared about, a couple different issues.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Claudia Reese.
Hello, my name is Claudine Reese, and I live at 3120 East Vina Del Mar Boulevard. And I just had a question, and that question, first of all, thank you for your service to our city. I appreciate it. I'm sure it's thankless sometimes. However, I wanted to know if it would be possible, or if already you had planned on the way you live stream these meetings. I know that it's of great interest to the community right now, the meetings coming up with Serrata and some of the other hotels. If maybe we could have that meeting available to the people who can't make it, because I know some of those meetings are a little bit earlier in the evening, and I've talked to people in my neighborhood and they're not able to make some of these meetings, but I know there's great interest.
It's on TV right now, isn't it?
No, there's a meeting for the Serrata on Thursday,
Those
and
I know
then
you have
also
this.
the following
Wait,
week
this
as well.
And I think,
No.
are they in the community center? I believe they're in the community center.
Yeah, they are.
I didn't know if that was possible
But just
do.
to be clear, though, those are not our meetings.
Correct. Those are not some meetings. Those are meetings by the developer Yeah.
It's their
Now-
responsibility to conduct and run those meetings.
Correct. Now, having said that, later on, not for this meeting, you can request from the developer if voluntarily he wants to do that or not. Later on, you can look at changing your rules and say any community meeting by a developer needs to be broadcasted. That would require a change in the land development code, but that's an avenue that the commission has for a future meeting, not for this meeting.
An action item?
Is there anything preventing us from live streaming it? I mean, it's in a city facility, and we have the equipment already. Is there a prohibition against it, or is it just...
Are you comfortable with that?
If it's for the city to, they would have to take their, over at the other...
It's the community center, so that it is the space, there's space for the time of the meeting because they have rented the space.
Yeah.
But
it's perfect.
it's a public meeting.
So if I remember correctly, for Corey Landings, I believe Stearns, I'm sorry, I forget the full name of the law firm, but...
Stearns Weaver.
Stearns Weaver, had some sort of Facebook camera, they had something, and at least Batzel may be aware, because I think they, if my memory's right, and sometimes it's not right, but I think they had something.
I'm perfectly fine with any, I don't know why they would object to it. It's a noticed meeting, but, Alex is right. They're responsible for doing these meetings and conducting these meetings as a prerequisite to the application. But if the city wants to pay to have staff there to tape it or to capture the meeting and then put it back on the internet, that's fine.
Could we reach out as a first step to Elise Batzel, who's the lawyer from Stearns Weaver, and...
Yeah, I can do that and ask if they to tape the meeting.
I remember that it didn't work very well. It worked, but to a degree.
Yeah.
We had somebody all in the back of the room stand up and ask a question.
Yeah.
Even here, we're not plumbed for, we're not a TV studio per se.
Yeah. That's to Alex's point. Like if the code is changed so that it is codified that it's going to be broadcasted in some way, then at least there'd be some consistency with the technology. Because if you leave it up to the applicant who has to conduct the community meeting, they may have different. Some may not have the best technology, best microphones, and then citizens will be frustrated when they try to watch it and they can't hear what's being asked or talked about, things like that. So I guess we'll just talk to Elise and see about trying to get that done. But it is, lots of communities do require this type of thing, and then they basically send their team out. The government's team of, audio-visual people to ensure that it's actually captured and taped and properly, instead of leaving it up to the applicant.
Okay.
But then it's a fiscal impact to the city.
I don't think we have that kind of equipment. But anyway, can we look at it and let's look? I don't think we'll get something for Thursday night from a city perspective, maybe.
Yeah, and our PI always had this week, so just coincidentally.
Maybe
But we'll reach out to the attorney and see if they can do that.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Amy Auerbach?
Amy Auerbach, 46th Avenue, St. Pete Beach. I'm also happy to email the people around the Serrata because they had emailed me. And my comments at this time are about the Serrata. I have a visual. So this is the second notice from the Serrata, the back of the notice for the April 20th meeting. And right here, which is not really legible, there's a statement that says, proposed boardwalk by request of the city of St. Pete Beach. So I'm just asking if there's some sort of boardwalk plans. I didn't see anything relating to boardwalks in the comprehensive plan, so just curious about potential boardwalks, and also just the order of operations of the city making the request of the development before the development is brought to the city formally, unless I'm misunderstanding the process by which the developers come to the city. So I guess just highlighting this and curious about it for the record. That's all for this.
That's been something that's been talked about for years.
Okay.
I don't know that's going to happen, but the thought is have a boardwalk all the way from north to south, if each property wanted to do it.
I think the
Treasurer.
question is,
Okay.
it says on that it was requested by the city. So then the question is, what communication has the city had with the Serrata up until this point, that the Serrata would put something in writing that says, this is what the city requested of us before they've even submitted a conditional use application?
Correct. So as we reported to the commission prior to the new owners acquiring the property, so we were the prospective developers, they met with myself and staff. This is about 6 months ago. And, we talked about the project, and we told them some of the things that the city had been envisioning for a long time, and the boardwalk was one of those things.
So is there an innuendo here that the city did something wrong?
I'm sure it's not.
No, I'm just asking if there's going to be boardwalks. That feels like something big to me, changing.
And that's the only reason why I made that comment, is this has been talked about for a long, long time. I think the reality is that you would have to stitch together a boardwalk, and although some owners might want to do it, some owners that don't want to do it. I would think specifically condominiums that don't necessarily want somebody walking right behind their place. So the reality, would that ever happen? Who knows?
Right, and Vice Mayor, I've learned my lesson about innuendo. I'm just preparing my comments for the community meeting on Thursday, so I just wanted to get clarification here as well.
And I'll get confirmation, but I believe it's also part of the county's transportation master plan.
Okay.
To have a boardwalk on the backside. Like you say, it's been discussed for many, many years.
And Treasure Island has that one, for probably a lot of people are familiar with, that apparently a lot of people like.
Thank you. Any other audience comments?
I don't have any more cards signed up for general comment. The rest are for actual items on the agenda.
Great. All right, so we have action item 5A, the Gulfway paving design.
Yeah, so let me start with this item, and then I have Brett Warner, who's the city engineer, to get more into detail. We have every year adopt, as part of our road assessment plan, a list of roads that are going to be mill and resurfaces on that given year. And we have a plan that basically says that over the next 2 years, fiscal year 23 and 24, every road that is less than 70 points in the rating system is going to be resurfaced in the city. So a big portion of the allocation for this year is Gulfway. If you've driven it, it's in really bad shape. But Gulfway has unique challenges that a lot of other roads do not have, because the road system in Paso Grill serves as a drainage system. So the way that the water moves from the west side to the east side is through the road system, which that basically creates the need for really high level of surveying and high level of milling equipment when the road is going to get paved, because you have very short tolerances that you got to meet. So with that intro, I mean, Brett can tell you a lot more as to what's in the scope of work up here, and why we're using a firm to actually help us get to the construction documents.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, Brett Warner, City Engineer. This project is aimed at fixing a lot of issues that we've identified along Gulfway. Everybody that's been down around Paso Girl Beach has noticed the road is in very, very bad shape. One of the main issues that's causing that condition to be present is the water just has a very, very long way to go, and it has a very difficult time getting to where it needs to go. Rainwater that falls on the west side of Gulf Way has to go up the curb line on the west side, across the street, down the other curb line, all the way down the side streets to Paso Girl Way before it discharges.
Brett, how long has that design been in place?
Beginning of time.
Yeah,
Probably.
I think since the hurricane that took out the sand wall and caused the new sand wall to be built.
1985,
Yeah.
86. And that, so you'll see it hit all the roads in Paso Girl, at least from, well, for sure from First to probably 20th, 22nd. From the east, if you stand by the seawall in the east and look to the west, you will be surprised at how much of a slope there is all the way up this way to the east. It's gradual, but it is significant.
And that slope has been there forever. I think what
Yeah.
you're referring to,
Right.
85, was when some of the curbs and
That's when all
other
the
things
trees came
were-
out.
Right.
Yeah, that's when.
There's some pretty cool pictures in the Warren Webster building about,
Right.
not cool, but dramatic pictures about what
Yeah.
happened back
I think
then.
we had to repave probably back down because we had to.
And that may be the last time that this road has been repaved. I don't know that I've got records of it being resurfaced since, I know the last couple of years since I've been here, but even before that, so.
There is really no drainage.
There's no drainage, it's all surface discharge.
Kind of like what we talked about in Don Cesar area, it's all, there is no, your typical, gutter, inlet, drain, pipes underneath, that doesn't exist.
And it actually works pretty well, except for a couple of spots.
And exactly, and a lot of those spots, the road actually slopes the wrong direction. It's got to, we're going to, as part of this, so I can get into the scope.
Yeah, Brett, please, stop us, go through your pitch, sorry.
So the scope for this design task order that we brought forward is to survey the entire stretch of roadway, and George F. Young will take that survey and prepare a surface model using AutoCAD, and that model will be used in a GPS-guided paving machine. And so we're actually going to design this surface and lay this surface using very, very precise equipment so that we can ensure that the water is going to get from the west side to the east side and down the side streets. The survey and the design is going to go up the side streets to that first alleyway so that we can ensure that the surface is going to get the water where it needs to go.
And Brady, if you can clarify two things. Is this the only area of the city where this actually happens?
Where we have ponding water?
No, where we have the, aside from the Maritana area as well, but the water flowing through the streets as a drainage system.
This is one of the largest surface draining areas in the city. Drainage has many components, right? But this is very, very unique to our city as far as a drainage system.
And to replace that with a typical drainage system will cost in the high millions.
We would have to run new pipe and new inlets and regrade the street all the way from Paso Girl Way onto Gulf Way and up, halfway up each block in order to achieve that goal. If we were to install a traditional drainage system with piping and inlets and things like that.
And your swag on that is?
Millions of millions?
More than this.
Yeah, tens of millions.
Okay.
Just ballpark.
Okay.
It's a very large area, and it would require many, many thousands of linear feet of pipe to be installed. Gulfway is one of the worst single stretches of roadway outside of Gulf Winds Drive and Boca Ciega, which we've already got plans to address. I've got the pavement condition index analysis that we did. I think the last time we did that was 2019, Alex, if I remember correctly. Goes from 1st to 22nd. The worst segment is 52 out of 100. I think the best segment is 74 out of 100. So there's a range there, but we want to keep everything above 70 is our goal. And this is one of the largest stretches of roadway that is substantially below that goal.
So the proposal here is from
1st to 22nd.
GPS coordinate.
Survey, GPS, surface generation.
So by doing that, just to put it to layman's terms, make sure I got it, the equipment gives GPS coordinates, so when the paving machine comes in, it matches those coordinates, and the reason you need to do that is to get the proper slope so that the water goes the right way.
Correct.
As opposed to other areas where we kind of, I don't want to say wing it, but it's sort of...
So a typical paving machine, you mill out 2 inches and you put 2 inches back. So your elevations are going to be retained during a standard paving operation. This time, we will mill out maybe 1.5 inches, or it depends on how much we need to change the elevation, and then the paving machine will set a new elevation that isn't necessarily exactly the same as the old elevation, based on the GPS coordinates from that surface model that's loaded into the system.
And that will allow you to get the right pitch so the water will go where it needs to go?
Correct.
Okay, so how much additional, so this is 155K roughly. How much additional does this GPS component cost to do?
It typically adds around $50 per ton of asphalt that's laid.
And take that into layman's, so what does that mean?
$300,000 or $400,000 more than what we
Wait, that's in the paving?
Huh?
This is 150?
In paving.
Right, so, but in the 150K, today's motion is for, because we'll talk the paving sometime, I assume, in the future.
Right.
Well, that's my follow-on question. How much additional, I mean, our normal milling and paving, we wouldn't do this GPS work.
Correct, we wouldn't do this
So
design at all.
how much additional is this GPS activity costing us in the 100, or what component of the 155 is that?
If we were to do a standard mill and overlay, we would not do any of this 150,000.
Right.
155,000. It typically does not involve the design component. The paving company is just matching the current elevation, so we don't need to do that.
And then the follow-on question is, I think, how, when we actually do the milling, do the actual work, how much additional cost do we have because we have to match the, I think you said is a special milling and paving machine that matches the GPS coordinates. I'd be interested to see it when it comes in, by the way, but...
It's pretty cool. It's got posts with GPS, like sensors mounted on the equipment.
So it's, how much additional is that over normal milling and paving if we did first to 22nd?
I think for this stretch it'd be about, what, $350,000.
Right. Sure. Normally it would be about 600. This is going to be about 950.
When we come to the point of doing the work?
Going to come to the point of doing the work, which we're not doing right now, and we are in the process of putting the bids out to select contractors to have available to do
I
that
assume
work.
this is specialized work, not our normal milling and paving person.
It is, yes.
Okay, one more. If throughout the document, we talk about now the crosswalks, that we want to add crosswalks from 1st to 9th, but in certain areas, we talk about 1st through 8th. And then when I looked on Google Maps, there seems to be a crosswalk already on 1st. So can you help bridge all that for me?
So the crosswalk at first is just paint. I think the intent is to add the exact same style crosswalks that exist in the rest of the stretch. So when the asphalt gets milled out, obviously there won't be a crosswalk at first anymore. So we will design using George F. Young survey at the precise elevation for the new road surface, a crosswalk with a concrete collar and inlaid brick to match the rest of the crosswalks through Gulfway up to 22nd.
Okay. And is it 8th?
I think there's no crosswalk at 8th. There's a crosswalk at 9th.
9th, yeah, there's a crosswalk.
No, just because the document talks, if we just need to clarify it, because the summary issue talks about 2/3 of the way down, the project includes color asphalt, top to the pedestrian crossing between 8th Avenue and 1st Avenue, but in the bid, it talks about from George F. Young's proposal, it talks 1st through 9th.
I think the intent is to ensure that there is a crosswalk at each intersection between 1st and 9th Avenue.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I do have another item. In here, and sorry to hog up all the time here, on page 24 of 32 in George F. Young's proposal number 8, there's no public or stakeholder involvement, and I would like us to have at least some sort of stakeholder meeting. I think it's a good thing to have. I am not proposing that we pay the supplier $5,000, which they usually charge us to make their nice charts and come in and spend 30 minutes and showing us charts. Even if we just did it ourselves, have a community meeting, make a couple PowerPoint charts just to let residents see what's going to happen before. And by the way, I'm going to have the same discussion on when we get to the other item, but that's the other contractor.
Yeah, typically on a milling and resurfacing job, we wouldn't do that, but we'll be happy to have a meeting with District 4. We'll coordinate with
we did it
Commissioner
with
Marron.
Historic Preservation Board. This was before the board as well.
Again, I just want to make sure residents feel comfortable, know what's going on, and we don't, have a Monday morning quarterback, as the expression goes, saying, well, I never thought that would be like this, and...
Yeah, no, yeah, we'll have a meeting at the Warren Webster, and we'll invite people, and, no.
No biggie, but just... And I don't understand what's on page 21 of 32 from Tierra, in the supporting documentation. I don't know who they are, and it seems to be a spreadsheet for the city of St. Petersburg.
Tierra is a geotechnical firm. They'll be taking samples of the base and subgrade to ensure that the road doesn't...
I only know what goes in the packet here, and it says city of St. Petersburg, so...
They do core sampling, I think,
Yes, yep.
which is in the scope of the George F. Young.
I understand. I'm just, what's in the packet and what I read, it doesn't support the work, but... So I'd like to see us get that, just the paperwork sorted out. And then in the page before that, on 20 of 32, we have a proposal from George F. Young, but it's also on our letterhead, which I don't quite understand either.
Yeah, I already spoke to Vince, we're going to correct that in the future, because we do give them the front form, which is the work order request form.
The task order form.
Right, the task order form. But there's really no reason why the rest of the information really has to be on our stationery. So we'll fix that.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I said I had one or two, and I asked a lot. So. Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
Any other questions, or?
Thank you. Good project.
Do we have any audience comments?
Susan?
Hi. Susan Consul, 6340 Third Palm Point. As a representative of the Third Palm Point Homeowners Association, I'm here to speak about the Gulfway paving design authorization. These monies include pedestrian crosswalks at avenues between 1st and 9th Avenue, and no other area in the city has that many crosswalks, for better or for worse. And in addition to this project, the Complete Streets Initiative in the Corey Avenue District is underway. These south and north end projects leave Gulf Boulevard pedestrian safety hazards unaddressed. And while I recognize that Gulf Boulevard is a state highway, I'm asking what the city's plans are to address the issue of pedestrian safety and insufficient crosswalks on Gulf Boulevard, specifically between 44th Avenue and 75th Avenue. Since 2019, there have been more than 10 accidents involving pedestrians on Gulf Boulevard in this area, according to ABC News. Even though there's 5 lighted pedestrian crosswalks in addition to crosswalks at the 4 intersections with traffic lights, pedestrians are still at risk. The intersection of Gulf Boulevard and 64th Avenue has no crosswalk or traffic light, and yet 64th is a major road leading into our community, the Third Palms Point neighborhood, serving 164 residential homes and the 3 Palms Point condominiums. It's the only major avenue along Gulf Boulevard leading into a residential neighborhood without a crosswalk or a traffic light. You think about Bella Vista, Vina Del Mar, others have traffic lights and crosswalks. So residents in the Third Palm Point neighborhood and their families must walk along 64th Avenue, where there is no sidewalk, and they cross Gulf Boulevard at either the crosswalk and they have to go down to the 7-Eleven, or they have to go near 71st Avenue. And in actuality, what most of us do, we jaywalk across Gulf Boulevard to where Agaves is to continue walking on Upham Beach. And a lot of the people that park along 64th Avenue on the other side of the street cross the same way in order to go to Odie's Mediterranean Deli or to continue on to the 7-Eleven. The crosswalks at the 7-Eleven and 71st are not fully being utilized. They take the easiest path, and that's across 64th Avenue and Gulf Boulevard. The Three Palms Point residents and all the tourists in our area deserve a community with safe streets, particularly along Gulf Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the expenditure of $153,555.78 under the continuing engineering services contract with George F. Young for the Gulfway pavement resurfacing from 1st to 22nd Avenue design.
Second the motion.
City Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Frislowski?
Yes.
Mayor Petrola?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, item for discussion 5B, approval of task order with Kimley Horn for Sunset Way and 71st Avenue sidewalk design and support services.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is a project that we've been discussing for a little while, and is part of improving the pedestrian mobility on the north portion of the city. The area along Sunset Way has, over the last couple of years, increased in the level of activity by a couple of new restaurants and hotels that have developed along Sunset Way. So as a result of that, it has become really an attractor for people who go to Upon Beach. And on any given weekend, you will find multiple people walking on the street, going from Upon Beach to that restaurants and bars in that area, including people with families and children, small children. So it's really an unsafe condition, and something that we've been looking for a while to address. So the first portion of this work is connecting through a sidewalk all the way from Corey Avenue along Sunset Way to 71st, turning around on 71st and going all the way to Beach Plaza. There is a second phase of this, but we're trying to reconfigure how the north end of Beach Plaza will work, because there's an opportunity to maybe create some additional parking spaces there and reconfiguring the sidewalk. So the north side of Beach Plaza is not part of this project. It's only the 71st portion of the work that we're doing. Michelle, you have a slide over there that we can help people. Right, that helps describe the project area. And because the city has really allow a lot of alternative uses within the public right-of-way in that area. So we're basically trying to do this in a way that minimizes the number of properties that are going to get impacted, and going along the west side of the road and the north side of the road minimizes the number of people being impacted. Doesn't mean that they're not being impacted, but when we looked at the different alternatives, that's the one that generates the least amount of impact to either the apartment buildings or the couple of individual single-family homes along 71st Street that will have impact in the sense that the public right-of-way that is in front of their homes, that they have gotten used to make it feel like it's part of their property, but it's really it's public right-of-way. It's going to be utilized for this. Part of this effort here is to try to figure out the width of the sidewalk that we can put in. The comprehensive plan calls for TC1 and TC2 areas to be 10 feet. I don't think that's going to be practical here. We're going to be looking at 6 and 8s. It could be 6, 7, or 8. I mean, that at least allows us for people to walk side by side with each other when you have at least 6 or 7 feet in front of the other ones. Commissioner, you recommended another meeting, and we can have a meeting with the that community and that area specifically to address this. I think the consultant work is going to give us a few more answers in terms of specifically how, what those widths are going to be in different areas. So we'll find the right time to meet with the public when we have really better answers. Is there anything I missed? Sure.
No, I think you covered it pretty comprehensively.
So to clarify, then, this is a study to run, and just for everybody, and why I pulled this out is so that everybody's on the same page. We've been talking as a city, on improving pedestrian connectivity and having a safe environment. We heard from the previous speaker. I mean, if we net it out, she's looking to have a safety for pedestrians across the entire city. And that's what this project, I believe, is intended to do. Correct. Okay. So the study from Corey Avenue, and for those who don't know the map in their head, that's where Woody's is, so to speak, coming north to 71st, they will look to add...
South.
I mean, south.
You said going north.
I did say, yes, you're right.
Yes.
Yes. South.
The other north.
The 71st, excuse me. They're going to look to augment the sidewalk, because there's some in certain portions and some areas have and some don't, or are they looking to reconfigure so we have one contiguous sidewalk either on the east side or either on the west side?
We are recommending that we look at doing it on the west side, and there's less driveways, less roads to cross when you just go along the west side, so it's a safer route on the west side. I believe some of the sidewalk there is 4 feet, Michelle?
4 or 5.
Right, so we're probably trying to make that at least 6 in some of those areas. That's 6 is kind of like the minimum for people to walk side by side with each other. Each person really requires about 3 feet width. And I'm looking at the architect who, like,
I think you are correct.
that's about.
There are areas where there's no sidewalks.
Yes, there are
areas where the sidewalks are so narrow on one side of the street that if somebody's walking down that and somebody coming the other way, that person ends up in the street.
Right.
So it's just, you go down there on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday night, and that street is full of people walking back and forth, north and south on that street.
Okay. Yeah. There are some, so it crosses both of our districts. I have feedback from particularly Envoy Point, which is the big complex there, and I think their HOA president's going to speak with us tonight, how this will encroach and what this will do to potentially their property. They sent some pictures with what they thought where the sidewalk would go on 10 feet. I mean, there's some concern. I mean, I have said I don't believe we should have, I've said it when we had our discussion about 73rd Avenue, I don't want to see 10-foot sidewalks. I know it's in the comprehensive plan. I don't think we need 10. 8 even pushes it, but we'll wait till we see what the design comes back. I also would like to see some sort of community meeting before, or feedback meeting, whatever we want to call it, but not again paying Kimberly Horn $5,000, which they normally charge us to, as everybody does, make pretty charts and send their engineers, et cetera. I don't think this is that complicated.
Michelle and I will do it for less.
Yeah.
So.
On that one. And I think the only other thing, and yeah, you can call me a nitpicker, the proposal doesn't add up. The spreadsheet's off by $1.
We've already corrected that, so.
Well, and I think we need to go back to our suppliers, and we can just use this as an example. When something comes in, we need to reject it. We shouldn't be accepting poor work from anybody and then bringing it into an agenda item. So, thank you.
The intention, though, is to stay on our right-of-way.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you have public comment, no?
Do we have, so one of the things that's been brought up multiple times in commission meetings in the past is the challenge with using the same supplier over and over and over again. In this particular case, Kimberly Horn. And my understanding is that they're more of an engineering firm rather than a planning firm. So if we're looking at making a plan, so just looking at the last few plans that we've received from them, there's been a lot of community discussion and, looking at Gulf Winds Way, looking at Boca Ciega Drive. I think it'd be interesting to see if we can get a second opinion or have somebody else take a look at it as well.
Okay, I mean, this is engineering work, this is not planning work. This is basically going and doing a survey and figuring out where you can fit 5 feet, where you can fit 6 feet, so that's, engineering, geotechnical work, so it's not planning work. And they've already been helping with this project, so if you decide to do that, it's, the purview of the commission. If you don't want to go forward with this, we'll have to bring somebody else that is going to have to come up to speed on this project, and we can figure out how much that will cost. But that's at the discretion of the commission.
And then the second part is, the sidewalk, the way the blue line is, I'm sorry if you can't see it anymore, but it looks like it terminates on the northwest corner of Beach Plaza and 71st. And then from 71st south, on the west side, it's nothing but parking spaces. So we have a sidewalk that essentially goes to nowhere because it doesn't connect with anything else. So if we're trying to prevent people from or trying to create a more safe environment for people coming from Corey Avenue, 73rd, the rest of the restaurants that are in that area, to connect with Upland Beach parking, then that still leaves us with 2 or 3 blocks of where they're walking in the middle of the road anyway. So now we've spent $50,000 on a study, we spent however much to put sidewalks in, and it doesn't really make the situation much safer. Because you've got the migration doesn't terminate at 71st and Beach Plaza, but rather they're going to keep going south or somewhere else, or they're coming from south going north. And so if anything, we should have a more comprehensive study that includes the entire section so that we're not piecemealing this thing together. And now if we want to do the next part in a year or 2 from now, we're going to have the same conversation. Well, Kimley did it last time, so we'll bring Kimley again. Otherwise, we have to bring somebody else up to speed. So why not just start?
It's actually the other way around. Yeah. We have had a consultant that's already been looking at resurfacing the whole Beach Plaza area. And when they did that, they look at alternatives in which to reconfigure the parking area and the sidewalk that is going to connect to the northwest corner. So we have another consultant who had been working on that area that is going to be doing the second part of this, which is basically be connecting the existing sidewalk on Beach Plaza all the way to the northwest corner.
So why not bring that consultant in to connect this part? Why are we having 2 separate consultants doing the thing that should be one project?
Because they have both been engaged separately on dealing with different pieces of this. You can, get somebody else to come and redo the whole thing, but we feel that this is the process that was going to get you to get something on the road completed quicker. But if we want to go back to the drawing board, we can.
Well, it's a partial solution. It doesn't fix the entire problem. And so now we're looking at part of it, and then at some point in the future, we'll look at the other part again, maybe.
What's the other part?
So when
you say the other part, can you just be specific about?
Yeah, so where the bottom left,
right where her finger is.
Michelle's index finger is, from there down to Upland Beach, those are all parking spots that are part of the condo over there. So the sidewalk doesn't...
They're public. There's 19 public parking spaces there.
So I could add some clarity. The other consultant that was working, that Alex had mentioned, was also working at a whole redesign on Upland Beach parking in general. That's why it was a different effort, and they weren't looking at the sidewalk piece connecting from 71st to Corey Avenue. So that's why it was two different projects at the time, and now we're scoping it to bring them together, but in different phases.
So, Mr. Mayor, one of the things that I have brought up with Michelle and with the city manager previously, that north end where her index finger was, so there's 19 parking places there that you have to have a resident permit for the area or the general parking permit to park there.
All city resident permits are accepted.
All right, thank you.
Simple answer.
So there's 19 resident parking places where her finger was. If you go down there, it's a wide expanse between where those 19 parking places are and eastward to the building with the big X or cross, depending how you're looking at it. So I've asked, how do we improve parking? You see empty places, it's the beach. You've got just a little bit north of the X residential units that don't have any on-site parking. So we've created some permit parking. We never have enough parking.
Yep.
So I've challenged them, the staff, to say, what can we do for that? Because when you walk down there, you just see big open expanses. You go, well, geez, we could park more cars in here. So just, I don't know. I mean, I've always been accused of trying to design on the fly, right? You can take those 19 spaces, push them further to the to the east, and put the sidewalk behind there, but then you've really narrowed the road down, and in front of the X, to the west of the X, that's actually their parking for that unit.
And it still doesn't connect all the way down to Upland Beach, so even if we added those 19 spots, it doesn't fix...
No, the 19 are there, but I say if you kick them over, push the sidewalk down, but we're not going to design it here. I think your request, if I understand it, is to marry the two projects together and do this once.
Yeah, and have a discussion, as you mentioned, with the residents in that area. I mean, just looking at the house in the northeast corner there of Sunset Way and 71st, I mean, those two homes, if we put 10-foot sidewalks in there, will be in their front door and on the side of the house.
So I've got maybe a suggestion, because I agree with what you're saying. I brought it up with city manager, we met on Monday, I guess.
Right.
And I think it's okay to proceed with this as a design project, proceed with the other one as a design project, where you want to marry them together as under the construction project. That point can stop right where it's at, the other design can link up with it, but I would agree that we shouldn't choose two separate construction projects, and in that way we get it done. It is going to require some redesign in there, because there's not enough room to put that sidewalk.
So where were you pointing? You were saying with the redesign.
Yeah, right along where everybody's talking about, right on Beach Way, south
Beach
of...
Plaza.
Beach Plaza, south of 71st.
Okay, yeah.
On the west side of the road.
Okay, we'll bring an agreement with the other consultant to finalize that piece, and that makes sense
That solves the
to put it on the same construction contract.
Commissioner Frislavsky, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but this is what you do in your day job. Is that a big deal to marry that up, in your view?
No. Well, not knowing what the south design is, but yeah, that's not unusual to have, two different documents and have the contractor bidding on both of them at the same time. Or to bid this one, have a clear stopping point, and then bid the other one, depending on when that design is done.
The design that we have was from the Upland Beach project, which part of that project, the larger scale, we can't move forward, but we were taking the piece that we can, which is in that area that creates a center island.
Yeah.
And I think it's about 12 additional parking spaces in that area that we can separate, because we already have a design for that.
All right.
Okay.
Because I do agree, it needs to be linked.
Yeah.
That piece needs to be connected.
And we should know if it can be before we commit.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is we have the right of way to do it.
Right.
Yep.
It's just a matter of how you want to do it. There's enough room there physically.
Yeah, there's a lot of existing constraints on the right-of-way, utility poles, things like that. That's why most likely the 10 feet is not feasible there. When we've talked preliminary with the consultants, they're saying 6 to 8 max, just from existing constraint, and then the budget, you'd have to reconstruct the road, which we're not going to do on this project.
Audience comments?
Gary Canfield?
Yes. Don't play football.
Take your time.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Gary Canfield. I'm the president of Envoy Point. Oh, let's see, is it still, can we still show that? I'm the president of Envoy Point Condo Association, representing about 210 tax-paying owners. And on this map, and I thank Michelle for doing this, here's Envoy Point. This is Envoy Point. And this project that I just recently became aware of was of great concern to me initially because I thought it was going to be 10-foot sidewalks. Now I'm hearing 6, 8. I don't know what it's going to be. But what I'm still concerned about is that we have a wall that surrounds our building along Sunset Way and 71st Street, or 71st Avenue. And I'm concerned that any sidewalk expansion, and I'm not opposed to sidewalks, any sidewalk expansion is going to take away from our landscaping, which was specifically put in place along our walls to prevent wall hoppers from jumping over our walls. So anything that would, originally when I thought of 10 foot, the sidewalk was going to abut our walls, which would have just been an open invitation for people to just jump over our walls, which is what we're trying to avoid because of the security issues associated with people jumping our walls. And it happens all the time because they think they can cross our property and get to the beach. Unfortunately, they don't know there's a gate with a lock on the other side that won't enable them to do that. But again, the mayor and Commissioner Grill have outlined a number of projects, but here's the thing. You're absolutely right. This ends here, and it doesn't do anybody any good because there's no sidewalk accessing the beach. So I think that this may be, I guess that my concern is I would like to see and have an opportunity to have our residents have an opportunity to provide input in terms of what this thing is going to look like when it finally gets to the final stage. And I know this is just a plan to look at it and to conduct a study, but I'm concerned about the impact that it will have on Envoy Point and our safety, and not only that, but our curb appeal, which we have taken great prides in enhancing over the years, to the point where we've put pavers going out into the street, and we've increased the island that we have in front of our entrance. Do those all go away because the sidewalk goes through there? Is that what the plan is?
There is a portion of that island that will have to go away, clearly.
And our pavers that are...
I don't know where your pavers are.
Pavers go out to the street from the exit and the entrance.
No, we just need to, have an area through the island so the sidewalk can continue.
Okay, well, again, I would just ask that as this thing develops, I would hope that we would have an opportunity to see it.
Yeah, and I'm going to get Michelle to get your information, and we'll have a meeting with you and your community, absolutely.
Okay, that was my comments, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give Michelle her map back.
No more audience comments?
I would like to make a motion to approve the task order for $41,938 with Kimley Horn to complete the design and related services for a sidewalk on the west side of Sunset Way from Corey Avenue to 71st, and on the north side of 71st Avenue from Sunset Way to Beach Plaza.
I think we need to amend the motion to $41,937.
I'll amend that to $41,937.
Thank you. Second.
Commissioner Grouse?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Grill?
Yes.
Commissioner Frizlowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Marone?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
All right, item 6A, a discussion to conduct an evaluation appraisal report of the St. Pete Beach Comprehensive Plan. So, it's been a long time since we've had a, shall we call it, a comprehensive review of the comprehensive plan that addresses, updated data, updated studies, and so on. And just tonight, we've talked about a couple different items that when the comprehensive plan was last reviewed 14 years ago, no one could have even imagined that there would potentially even be an issue, or potentially even, anyone should think about. For example, the discussion about having video as a requirement for meetings. That wasn't on anyone's radar 14 years ago because the technology actually didn't, it existed, but it was not as good as it is today, right? We're talking about, the city manager sent me an article yesterday on, the impact of climate change on sea level rise in the southern United States, and the impact over the last 10 years, how that's impacted the United States, especially in Florida, the coastal cities. And we've seen what happened with the last hurricane, which was slated to hit us, and that, good for us, unfortunately for Fort Myers, Sanibel, and the rest down there, and it hooked and hit them instead. We're looking at the impact of traffic on Gulf Boulevard, the amount of construction that's happening, the amount of cars and visitors that's coming on a daily basis. We're looking at safety. We've looked at, somebody mentioned today, the safety on Gulf Boulevard, right? The number of accidents that we're having on Gulf Boulevard. And these are all questions that we have to look at and say, the comprehensive plan makes a lot of those recommendations based on updated information and studies, right? Based on the changes in weather in our community, changes in what our residents want. And it's been a long time since we've looked at it, and for us to be able to determine what do we want the future of our city to look like, what should the future of our city to look like, considering all of the challenges that we're facing. And somebody's proposed to me and said, well, why don't we wait until the problems come up? And I said, well, no, why don't we address the problems beforehand, before they become so large and unmanageable? We should take a look at these issues before Gulf Boulevard gets to 100% capacity, right? If it isn't already at 100% capacity. But we don't know until we do those studies. And, I've received probably 20 emails from residents in the last 2 or 3 days about this particular agenda item, on both sides, saying, hey, we support this measure, we don't support this measure because we have a good comprehensive plan. And to those of you that say that we have a good comprehensive plan, I'd like to say 2 things. I know it's probably shocking that a politician is going to try to actually fulfill campaign promises, and I think that's where the shock for many people came in, that I'm trying to address this so early. But I think there's an urgency there because of what is potentially coming down the pipeline, and that's why I'm bringing this up so early. The second part is, we're just looking at the proposal is to look at the comprehensive plan. We don't know what changes are going to be recommended based on the updated information and studies. And so if the studies all come back and say, hey, everything is great, and if you think that the comprehensive plan is great and everything comes back and there's no changes to the comprehensive plan, there really is no danger in us opening up the comprehensive plan, looking at it. But the reality is, a lot has changed in the last 14 years since we've done a full review, since we've involved the public with meetings and open houses and forums and surveys and invited them to participate and say, us, the people that live here, we would like to be part of determining our own destiny, determining on what our city looks like, on how much, more traffic we can put up with, how much more safety we're willing to jeopardize. And so that is why I'm bringing this discussion before the commission, and that's why we want to invite the public for their comments as well, so that we can discuss and see, what is really the downside of us having a discussion about opening the comprehensive plan. What is the downside in us opening the comprehensive plan for a full review, so that we can determine, based on the most up-to-date data, what changes, if any, we should be making to the comprehensive plan. And the second component to that there's 2 more components. The second component is to have a dedicated comprehensive plan review committee. I understand we have a planning board, and if we do decide to move forward with a temporary board, my understanding is that city charter does provide for us to be able to set up temporary boards if we so choose to. This particular board would have to work with the planning board and their recommendations, but the thought process behind that was to have somebody or have a board that can dedicate their undivided attention to this one project, because it is a significant project, it's a significant undertaking. And then the third component of that was the pause for planning or moratorium, which is again based on the conversation that was had at a commission meeting last year in October, where part of the discussion was if we are going to open up the comprehensive plan, if we're going to do all the studies and updated data, it might be prudent for us to put in a pause until the comprehensive plan review is done. Now, intentionally, the verbiage says for the city attorney to draft the language so that we can make sure that we minimize any potential downside from having this pause, from having this moratorium in place. So that is the item that I wanted to bring before the board for discussion.
So what's changed in the last 2 weeks when this died on the table? Because on the first item, we have a workshop planned. I have personally been pushing for a workshop on it because you, before you sat in the chair, Mr. Mayor, stood at the podium and suggested we do this. And since October, I have said that we need to open the plan, need to look at a plan. Any plan, a business plan, needs to be reviewed on a regular basis. Nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
It's a shame that we're 7 months later and we haven't had that meeting. The meeting is now scheduled in 2 weeks. My understanding is staff is preparing a number of documents for review and for discussion at that meeting. So we are, it's in process. It is happening. I don't think we need a motion. And yes, as you and I'm sure our other colleagues will tell us, they probably will receive many common emails across the board. And for those sitting in the audience and watching, they run the spectrum. Like everything runs on a continuum. 100% agree, 100% disagree, and then people in the middle.
Right.
So,
well, I think that the reason it's on the agenda for today is, based on the earlier discussion, was, Commissioner Marone did request to have the language in black and white, and so here it is. And then this also gives us the opportunity to hear from the audience if we happen to have any audience comments at some point as well. So, because the workshop doesn't really provide for the public to have any feedback and input at that point. It's more for observation. I mean, we can talk and...
Always happy to hear from people. But to me, on the second point, I'll reiterate what I said before, 2 weeks ago. We have a planning board. They're staffed by appointees. Yes, we have the ability to name another board if we want to, but the planning board, I believe, is staffed with very good people today, and they are not overworked. In fact, I think we've canceled... I know we canceled the last meeting because they didn't have enough work to do. And I think there's been a few just this year in the last 3 months that have been canceled. So we have the ability, they're an advisory board to us, and we have the ability to prioritize their work. And I believe, and I don't know if we need a charter, if it's in the charter or code and ordinance, we just tell them this is your number one priority, don't work on anything else except this.
Yep.
So...
my thought is we clear the decks for them.
Yeah.
And I think we get a head start with them because a lot of them are experienced and already have some working knowledge of the comp plan and how our city works through the ordinances, through the comp plan, and through the land development code. So I really feel like it's an asset. We don't want to waste that asset. I also think from a workshop standpoint, I hate to always harken back to the Historic Preservation Board, but we went through many workshops and we did have a lot of community involvement. That community involvement was very consistent with what we do here, where people have submitted cards ahead of time with questions, with requests. They're read. There's discussions about them. So I think that it's really important for the residents to be involved in those workshops. It shouldn't be just a partnership between the commission and the planning board and we're the conduit for what the residents are thinking. because things are going to be changing on the fly. I anticipate many workshops, because I think that this is a lot to tackle. We can do it. We will do it. But I think we need to recognize that it's going to be a multi-tiered, it's going to be a tiered process. I think what the most important thing is one, that we commit to it, and that we commit to keeping on with it, meaning we have this meeting planned and this meeting planned and this meeting planned, instead of 6 months later, we still haven't had our second meeting.
Yep.
So I think, it's important from that aspect. If we want to get it done, that's how we have to approach it.
I would agree. I'm looking forward to the meeting in 2 weeks. I think some of the things that we really need to take a look at, be prepared either tonight or 2 weeks from now, is identify the scope. When you talk about the comprehensive plan, we can look at the whole thing. We can start to focus in on certain areas. We need to identify where we want the studies, what areas of expertise. I've got some ideas on that. I would also agree, I think the planning board is the right board to have it. They're just not that busy. And they don't, when you say they have to concentrate, I mean, they can concentrate on this. And I think it's good that we'll do a joint workshop, and then we'll just kind of have to see how we work through it between us and them, in terms of, whether we continue to have joint workshops, whether we're going to divvy up tasks, whether we're going to prioritize things and have them tackle some things, come back to us. Got to kind of get it organized. So.
I think consultants decide what consultants we're going to use.
Yeah.
Are we going to use Tara, who's worked on the last comp plan, or somebody else who worked on it, who can say, because she came before us and said, hey, I remember when we did that. Now I know why I did it. Now I'm thinking we probably should have done it this way. And so it was really helpful to have that historical knowledge, especially where she's willing to say, look, maybe it doesn't look so good today. Maybe today we needed to change it. And I remember why I did it then, but it's going forward, I can make these recommendations.
One of the things that was very helpful when we did this back when was having an economics study as part of it, because part of what drove some decisions on the comprehensive plan was the old economics. If you go back several decades back, it was very clear that we hadn't had a new hotel built in over 30 years in the city. So you have to ask the question, why? St. Pete Beach is a nice place, good road network from the interstate, and it was determined pretty quickly that the relationship between density and development rights between condominiums and hotels skewed it towards condominiums easily. If you came in as a developer, you want to just make money, you're going to build condominiums. You're going to form an LLC, buy a piece of land, develop it, sell, and move out. And that was why hotels were not happening in St. Pete Beach. So through that process of the master plan, which is really what the comprehensive plan is, those development rights were altered to give hotels at least an equal footing. And so I think we need, obviously, economics change over time. So that, to me, should be a big part of it, as well as good planners. Good planners, and somebody who understands the economics of a beach community like St. Pete Beach.
And to add to that, I think we, as I mentioned before, we need to look at the revenue flows, the tax impacts, the assumptions that are in the plan. You were involved, you know better than I. The commercial tax revenue, resident tax revenue, that gives us A plus B equals C. C is what we're spending as a city. So as we start changing potentially variables, A, what is the impact to B and or C? I mean, it's a zero-sum game.
Right.
And we need that just to understand it, so we can decide, okay, if we do this, here's a potential impact, we do that. Yes, different scenarios. Yeah. So, because we'll live with it. And, we've had a millage rate flat for 5 years, and I don't think anybody wants to see a millage rate go up, but.
Is there anything preventing us from opening that workshop up to what Commissioner Morone mentioned, for example, audience comments, even if we say, please submit them in advance, maybe not discussion, but just submit your questions and comments and we can read those and address it? Is there anything that prevents us from doing that, or?
No, there's nothing legally preventing you from doing it. It's just how you choose to use your time.
Right.
The only reason we have, the workshops allow us by design, because, so everyone knows, the sunshine laws, we don't talk on anything that comes before us for a vote. So the workshop is to get into a less structured environment, to be able to have open discussions amongst ourselves. So there's no, it has got to be a balance point, because if it's a 2-hour meeting and 2 hours of audience comments, we won't achieve anything.
That's the real issue, is how do you...
And I think what we did is we had the audience hand up their cards ahead of time, and then when we thought, we got to a point where we had questions that were appropriate for that particular item or topic, we stopped, read the question, read the item, and then we had a group discussion about it.
Yeah.
So this way we could maintain some continuity and speed through the meeting, but at the same time, make sure we hit everything everybody wants us to talk about.
Maybe we could set it up so that we receive audience comments by 24 hours ahead of time.
That's a good idea.
And then maybe be able to, if there's the same question 3 times, we just group it together, we put it in the right spot.
I mean, we know, we're going to get 100% support, 100% disagreement, and then, it's like Olympic scoring.
If I may
We need to
ask,
understand that.
if we're going to be reading the questions and trying to make sure that we group them together into repetitive questions and proper questions, we need more than 24 hours. So at least give us, we have, the meeting is in 2 weeks. If you can get 3 days, I was thinking, that way we can really digest the questions and put in them properly.
So we're going to be looking for really questions and proposals, because we want to consider ideas.
If we can do that by COB Friday, then that gives us, some time to work on this.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm the one that's the taker of public comment, so I don't have any problem with organizing them within 24 hours. I feel that I'm pretty efficient and can do that for you all. So I don't have a problem with 24 hours.
Thank you.
136?
36 hours? I can do 36. 16 hours? I can do 16.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's talk about the moratorium.
Okay.
I don't know the logistics of it. I think it's all about the legal, and that's why I turn it over to you, Andrew. What is your? I'm taking the temperature.
Yeah. So for a moratorium, it's got to be done by ordinance first of all. So that establishes that kind of timeline. However you establish it. So it's got 2 public hearings involved in adopting a moratorium. But then, more importantly, the substance of it needs to be specific in terms of, as I said last time, you're maintaining the status quo. I know the phrase "pause for planning" has also been used, but you're maintaining the status quo. But you have to state why. What is it? What is the reason for doing that? And I think I would feel uncomfortable if it's just to generically review the data and analysis and studies and potentially adopt new goals, objectives, and policies in the comprehensive plan. That's a very general statement. I don't know that that's a great reason to establish the moratorium.
Have the courts adopted certain standards and tests to apply?
Yeah, they have.
And
planning is obviously something that's recognized as not only your right but your obligation. Planning, you're commanded by state statute to do comprehensive planning for sure. So the courts do recognize planning as a reason for adopting a moratorium, but it needs to be in the public interest. That is something that Matthew and I had planned on. One of the topics that Matthew and I had planned on working in with the full presentation that Alex was also putting together. We were going to address moratoriums, property rights, and things like that. So we would be prepared at the workshop to be more specific about, what you're getting into, I guess, when you adopt a moratorium. And you can start the comprehensive planning process, get your pieces in place, your consultants in place, your board in place, your processes, and then do a moratorium. It doesn't mean you have to just automatically do a moratorium. You can get a little further into it, and then you're identifying, okay, now we know we've got an issue here. If you recall, we had a brief moratorium in Paso Royal when there were the issues of the backyards and there was confusion going on. That was definitely a need to have a moratorium. I mean, the sanitary sewer issue obviously was a no-brainer. There was, I was very comfortable with both of those moratoriums. But I think when we get into more of the case law and standards, how the courts look at it, now, as you know, you're an attorney, doesn't mean you won't get a lawsuit, even if, I tell you I like my chances in court under this moratorium ordinance. It doesn't mean that it won't be challenged. So those are the things I want to express to you all at the workshop a little bit. I have no desire to take up all your time, but give me 10, 15 minutes to talk about the different topics that Alex has asked me to talk about. I think it would be helpful in your thought process as you take in public comment, talk amongst yourselves, talk with your colleague, your appointee, the planning boards themselves. I think it's going to be a very robust discussion for sure. But hopefully that helps. But planning is for sure, if it's done for the public interest, is a topic area that the courts have seen as a reason to adopt moratoriums. But I'd like to be a little bit more specific about that when we adopt the language and draft it, because ultimately that's the document that I'm going to have to defend in court.
So how do you see this workshop going? Are you going to organize it where staff is going to do a presentation on the planning side, then we're going to get a legal briefing?
It's going to be tag team.
Yep.
Okay.
So there are some topics that we'll be hitting, alternatively. So.
And from a timing standpoint,
I don't know.
It starts at 3.
Yeah, we have allocated 3 hours, so it's
well, not 3.
2.5 hours,
yeah.
an hour for pizza break.
Yes,
I think we ought to take a food break. Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Pizza. I mean, from my point of, from my part of it, because it's all going to be a continuous PowerPoint, and I'm slipping my slides into the PowerPoint.
Okay.
And it's, I think, a little history on the litigation that gave you the comp plan that you have now, property rights, which includes Burt Harris Act, moratorium, and I was going to touch upon the Community Planning Act itself, which is what is the law that tells you have to have a comprehensive plan and what's in it and how to do it. So I'm thinking my slides can't be more than, I could do them really fast, 10, 15 minutes, but I don't know the other ones.
Well, once you get into Q&A with you guys, there's going to be a lot of questions. That's why we figured it 2.5 hours. And
it may be cart before the horse, but if there are cases where there's an articulated basis by the governmental entity for imposing the moratorium, where the court has they've prevailed on the challenge. It said this language is sufficient to prevail on a challenge.
What we can do is we'll put together, Matthew and I will put together some materials, like take-home materials, that won't necessarily be in the PowerPoint. There's only so much you can cover. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, people specialize in moratorium litigation. So, I mean, we can give you some take-home documentation as well, on that.
And I think it sounds like a very good approach, particularly the history part, not only for us, but also for residents, so that residents understand where we are, where we're coming from as a city, not as a commission, and what the background is. It just helps people with their understanding and forming opinions, and as we look forward, because we got to learn, make sure we don't make mistakes from the past.
Yeah, and we're targeting to send the PowerPoint sometime middle of next week.
We'll include our 2015 settlement agreement.
Yeah, we can include it. We're going to talk about it, but we can include the actual agreement.
Yeah. That's great.
Thank you. Andy.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. I mean, that won't be in the slot.
No.
The whole sound, you want a copy of it?
Yeah, just so everybody knows that that's going to be...
Yeah,
just so everybody knows.
The attachments are really where the meanings are, because it tells you what the remedial amendments to the plan were. It tells you what changed, what goals, objectives, and policies changed as a result of that lawsuit.
And I think and the reason I reference it is because it is, to some degree, a midpoint jumping off point where we can look back and say, hey, this is where we were in 15. We don't have to be there now, but we can see, instead of just 04, I don't know, what was it, 04?
Mm-hmm. It would have been
04. So we have something between 04 and 2023 to reference as just kind of a guidepost. So that's what I was thinking.
Audience comments?
James Proctor.
My name is Jim Proctor. I live in Bella Vista Drive East at St. Pete Beach. Adrian Petrilla is sitting here today as mayor because a majority of voters made a statement. The statement is this: they are not happy with the status quo. Here are just a few of the recent actions the commission about which we are unhappy. And I'm speaking for a lot of people I know and the people that stood up and put him in office. The granting of a variance to the Miramar in the 60-foot zone to allow that hotel to build to 90 feet. Missing the opportunity to preserve green space for a park on the old Duke Energy property. That property has now been purchased by the Plaza Beach Hotel. And that also is one of the entrances to our only shopping center on St. Pete Beach. It's going to be plugged with parking or another hotel, whichever y'all deem to let them do. Approving the construction of 243 units on Corey Avenue, an area zoned for 90 units. You stole 150 units out of a pool. I don't know what type of pools y'all work in, but if you can take from one to get to the end result, Corey Avenue is going to be a mess. I guess that's a done deal. There are more examples, but my time is limited. One remark regarding the new sewer. And Ward, I talked to you about this. The new sewer is not an excuse to open the floodgates on new hotel development. The degraded and leaky pipes of our old sewer system was detrimental to the environment and had to be replaced, period. We were going to be fine. It was leaking. It was bad for the environment. It is vital that any renovation and construction plans not add additional rooms. Gulf Boulevard cannot handle the additional traffic. Quality is what we want, not quantity. Our hotels are making money hand over fist and should renovate rather than expand. Our comprehensive plan needs to be opened up, looked at, and changed where appropriate in order to be a workable and meaningful document. It's old. It needs to be looked at again. Imagine all the construction between the Happy Dolphin is sold recently, the Serrata. The Postcard Inn wants to add an addition. What's going to happen at Blind Pass Marina? These things need to be held in check of some type. Look at the project that the old Howard Johnson's, what Hilton did with it. They added no more rooms, but they made a 5 times nicer hotel. They raised their daily room rate, period. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kenneth Amos?
Thank you for your time this evening. A lot of the things I think were addressed during your discussion. My name is Kenneth Amos. I reside at 244th Avenue, St. Pete Beach in Bella Vista. What I want to address tonight is the motion itself, because there's a motion pending on the floor. I don't know if it's ever going to be addressed, but I looked at the motion as to being in 3 parts. First part of the motion is conduct an evaluation and appraisal report of the St. Pete Beach Comprehensive Plan, including future land use categories, density and intensity of land use, and critical development standards to complete a full evaluation and update the comprehensive plan. I think the word update with regard to that motion is probably premature because we don't know if it needs to be updated. I think there needs to be 3 separate motions here. The first part is to whether or not we should open up a committee and have a committee appointed to look at the comprehensive plan, and to whether or not that committee would make recommendations as to whether or not it needs to be updated. So I think to look at the motion as a whole, the way it sits now, it should fail because it needs to be divided into 3 parts. Number 1, are we going to open up the comprehensive plan to take a look at it? Number 2, are we going to appoint a committee for that comprehensive plan? And number 3, are we going to place a moratorium with regard to the possible amendments that may need to be made to that comprehensive plan? I would rely on Mr. Dickman, Attorney Dickman, with regard to your advice as to regard to the moratorium. You know, what's the standard for the courts? Are we going to be able to do this? I think based upon the committee's recommendations and what may or may not need to be changed, because obviously there are probably intended consequences with regard to that comprehensive plan and unintended consequences. And the reason for opening up the comprehensive plan would be to look at what the unintended consequences are. And I agree with your approach last week on the 28th when you said that, yes, we probably should be reviewing this every 7 years. So I don't think there's any disagreement in this room tonight as to whether or not the comprehensive plan needs to be evaluated. But there should be 3 separate motions. Number 1, are we going to evaluate it? Number 2, are we going to assign a committee to assist us in evaluating it? And number 3, based upon that committee's recommendations, are we going to set forth a moratorium? And if we are, what is the standard for setting forth a moratorium? What will the courts allow us to do so that we're not spending taxpayer dollars on litigation with regard to this moratorium? Because you know that if you don't do it right, we're going to be faced with litigation, and it's going to cost us a lot of money. We already know going through this comprehensive plan years ago that it cost us millions of dollars in legal fees. You know, Mr. Frizzolowski said tonight, you know, our budget, looking at it tonight, and our audit was great in 2022, but he referred back to 2010. Okay, that's the time when we were expending legal fees and going through all the problems that we were doing with this comprehensive plan. So I think we need to scale back the motion, and respectfully, Mayor, you know, I would request that the motion be denied as worded, but break it into 3 separate parts. Have the first part, do we want to open up the comprehensive plan for review? Yes or no. Second part, do we want to appoint a committee? Yes or no. Third part is wait for the recommendations from the committee to decide whether or not we can go forward with the moratorium. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy Auerbach?
Amy Auerbach, 46th Avenue, St. Pete Beach. I think some of my points are moot, so I would just say thank you for the upcoming workshop. If the materials are going to be made available middle of next week, just to confirm that they'll be posted with the agenda and the docs as usual, and that the full case law review also be made available so we don't have to make public information requests. I have 100% confidence that our city attorneys can draft a resolution that protects the city. If we do decide to proceed with a moratorium, I would suggest against a belts and suspenders approach where taking no action would appear to be the appropriate action, assuming that only the worst outcome would be happening if we decide to take these actions. And I would just like to highlight that I also have spoken to many residents that expect the city staff and commission to do this. So commend you for taking to do it in 2 weeks, because it is what many, many residents expect, myself included. So see you in 2 weeks at the workshop.
Thank you.
Lisa Robinson?
Lisa Robinson, 7100 Bocastega Drive. I just want to say in regards to number 6, it's about time. It's about time that the comp plan gets looked at, it gets reviewed. It's old, as everybody stated. It's outdated and doesn't reflect today's values or issues. Doesn't reflect sea level rise, density, and the increase in density, what it's going to do to the level of service. It doesn't address traffic increases, pedestrian walkways on Gulf Boulevard. We never had those back then. And that's only forced traffic down other streets, specifically my street. We didn't have GPS and the cut-through apps so that you knew where to cut through and how to get there quicker. And there was a lot of things we didn't have. And I agree, if we're doing it every 7 years, that's the way to do it. We've got to look at all the issues. We have to. Otherwise, we are remiss in what we're doing. In addition, a thorough evaluation is needed on the city's adherence to compliance with its own ordinances and codes. And I bring this up again. Its intentions to legally abide by those. Because we've issued stuff here that we haven't abided by our own codes and our own ordinances. And I fully expect the commission to do that. In light of all the potential development, we're going to get stuck with stuff that, well, we can't change it, so we need to look at what we're doing, and we need to do it right the first time out. I'm looking for your due diligence and your workshops. I'm glad to hear that we're doing workshops. That's great. And I'd like to see it, again, thank you for bringing up allowing residents or people's involvement, because there hasn't been before. Except for, I think, 2002, when we started the master plan, and there was workshops then. And again, back then, it was, according to every citizen survey, there was a total, they were totally against increases in height and density. And I think that still stays true. Thank you, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just to clarify, so every 7 years, again, by law, that's the schedule for your evaluation and appraisal report. Yours is due this summer. So, in a way, it's not just, that's just the law. So, right. And so that's, in a way, a little bit timely. It may be a little too soon, but I'm sure the state would probably give some type of extension if you were in the process of still planning, if you needed to.
Is that something that we can look at for the workshop?
Yeah, we're going to cover that in the workshop, because we're really not against a specific deadline.
Yeah.
The process that we've been embarking on, and I believe that's when you were here in October last year, there are technical changes that you got to do every 7 years to stay in compliance with state law and county comp plan. Those are moving through the process and can move separately from the effort that you're initiating today. There's nothing that says that because we have done the technical compliance, that you cannot do at any point that the commission wants any other changes to the plan. So sure. So we're going to finish that. We won't be under a clock, because we have made the compliance on that issue, and we're going to cover exactly what that does. And then everything else that the commission wants to then address in the comp plan, you got all the flexibility. You can work at your own schedule. I'm not saying that's going to take years, but this process, and we'll walk through the timeline, and it will show you how long it took in prior years, because public involvement is a key part of this.
Of course,
public involvement takes time. Send the meetings, and we're going to have to select consultants, and so we're going to address all of that in the workshop, so everybody understands what we have to do by law, which we're meeting, and what else is available for the commission to direct a new consultant group to work on in different scope, right?
So we can close out the scope of that project of the technical review and then start a new review if we so choose to.
And it can even start at you can even start at the same time. It's just absolutely right.
Sure.
Thanks for that.
Cool. All right, we don't have a motion on the table, so we can move on to the next item unless there's any other. So I wanted to just, and I promise it'll be a quick discussion, hopefully, on the freebie. I've received a lot of comments and emails and phone calls from residents, overwhelmingly positive experiences with the freebie. I mean, I've used it dozens of times myself. I think it's a great way to mitigate, some of the traffic issues that we have by being able to take cars off the road or keep them on the hotel properties or at home, and having, plus having electric vehicles versus having internal combustion engines. I think one of the challenges that comes up over and over again is, I can take a freebie to the restaurant, but then I can't take it back home at 9 o'clock because it's full. So I was wondering if there is any interest in having a discussion about, is there a way to maybe give priority to St. Pete Beach residents in the freebie, whether it's through the service provider, through the app, where we can say, look, if there's 5 requests and one of them is from a resident, that's going to go to the top of the queue. And to be able to, since we're spending $400,000 or $500,000 a year on the service, primarily it's the residents who are paying for it. It might be a nice benefit to residents, especially in the areas where the buses don't go, for example, in District 4, south of the Don Cesar, or south of Dolphin Plaza, for that matter. So District 3 and 4 don't necessarily have as much, they don't really have any other options for public transportation. So it might be able to give those residents an opportunity to use a public transportation that the city provides through the freebie. So the question is, or the item for discussion is would it be something that we might be interested in looking at? How can we give our residents priority? Maybe even that, that's the question.
I think this is a good problem where, when we've discussed this before, we're a product of our own success.
Yeah.
And we're oversubscribed at certain times. I mean, we've all had the experience of calling and, okay, where are they? And we look in the app, and the app says, oh, geez, the vehicle's up the north end of the city, and I'm down at the Dolphin, and So, I mean, this is a good problem. Priority is one way. I don't know, would have to ask, the staff can increase the service? Is there peak times? I mean, I know Michelle's got a lot of load reports and by hour, and this is one area where actually we've got a lot of good data that tells us what's going on.
I'd like to avoid more Uber and Lyfts coming down because folks can't get on. And resident or non-resident, if they don't want to wait 45 minutes, they're going to call an Uber or a Lyft, and here we come over the quarry and over the Bayway. I'd rather have, if the demand calls for it, more freebies.
So there is a peak, and the mayor is 100% right. It's somewhere between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. or it just it goes over there. We have asked the question. The mayor and I had a discussion on this, and we have asked the question of the provider whether they can reconfigure the app to have priority basis based on zones, or priority basis based on who you're. When you sign up for freebie, you create an account profile and see if they can prioritize on that. We have until now followed a policy that freebie dollars are not new dollars, they're replacement dollars as we slow down the CAT, and the PSTA services are beginning to do that. We are monitoring the CAT services. If you remember that they reduced the service that they used to have from 3 buses an hour to 2 buses an hour, and in the evenings they stop at 75th and turn around. we feel that there is still an opportunity to reduce that even more, and we're in discussions with PSTA to get further reductions on that. So we're still paying PSTA in the neighborhood of $180 a year for the CAT service. 180 basically buys us about 2 more vehicles on freebie. So following the same approach that we've been following, I think there's an opportunity to then be, addressing that, but that won't happen tomorrow. If you wanted to have another vehicle during the peak period, I can cost that out. I can have that information to you guys at the next meeting, or send an email and let you know how much it will cost to have another vehicle that addresses the peak, and at the same time we'll be able to give you an answer as to whether they have a way to prioritize the services. So I'll send an email to the commission with those 2 pieces. And
Why don't we put an agenda item for the next meeting on I'll call a freebie review, and let's look at ridership reports.
Sure.
I mean, I understand, and as a resident who hasn't been able to get a freebie, and you're standing there looking around like, hey, so priority sounds good. I've also read Animal Farm a couple of times. I mean, let's take a look at, the service and because I think the business community might have a problem, and the hoteliers in particular, saying, wait a minute, so residents now getting priority over, we're telling people, don't take your cars on the street, come here, we've got this great service. But let's look at the freebie. We still have a memo that we need to discuss that you sent to all of us, so maybe we can put that all as an agenda, all together as one agenda item, looking at the load. I mean, this is a good problem, right? It's a great service and everybody wants to use it. And what, like, for example, what are the average wait times? Because we all know when, I don't speak for myself, I don't speak for anybody, but I'm sure at least one person in the room would say, geez, I've been waiting too long. How long have you been waiting? 6 minutes, right?
Okay.
I mean, right? Because when you're waiting and you got to go and you're standing in the street, you want to get home. And 6 minutes seems like 6 hours, so where's that freebie? Michelle, email Michelle, where's my freebie? Took too long. So, but jokes aside, we need to look at service levels and how we're doing against the committed service levels, and I think this is a good time to, let's look.
What it would cost to add.
Yeah, and then.
But even before we get there, I'd like to know, where are we at with phasing out PSTA completely? Because that's been the plan. And is there an exact date? And is that a contractual issue? Because to me, that's the first thing we want to do. I mean, that's what we've said all along, where we went from District 4 to 4 and 3, then 4, 3 and 2, then up to 1, and...
Yeah, 2 parts. There is a contract, but it's only year to year, so the contract expires in September. So it's really not too far from now. Number 2, what has complicated the analysis...
contract or the
PSTA contract.
Okay, not the freebie contract.
The freebie contract actually we have an option to extend another year, and we need to start thinking as to putting that out for beta and all that. So all that's going to have to happen separately as part of our regular procurement process. What has complicated the PSTA analysis is that they're still running for free. And because they're running for free, it really alters the normal demand profile that you will have on any service. Anything you'll give for free, you're going to get a lot more than if you charge for it.
We're getting a lot more. We're getting a lot more.
And we get a lot more, right?
We're getting a lot more for free.
So
I don't know if we want it.
Right, yes. Right. But that complicates the analysis, because how many people are going to stay with the Sunrunner versus going to stay with the CAT once they begin charging for the Sunrunner?
But why do we care about the ridership on the PSTA?
If there is a segment of our employees, and it's mostly employees that are coming in, and the CAT, while it travels along the same corridor, has more frequent stops, and if people cannot use it to come in, then we're really doing a disservice to traffic, because we're going to have to bring a vehicle, right? And we don't want more vehicles. So that's why.
And there's the safety aspect of people and getting in their cars, and there are more people walking. And then we also have Bus 90, Route 90, which brings workers in and out, which I believe we've got, more people are taking the Sunrunner because it's free.
Yeah.
So let's get on the Sunrunner.
Right.
But But yes, we'll look at the whole thing comprehensively.
Right.
Would be good. Okay.
All right, thank you. Reports?
So I just provided you with an updated list of the boards and committees as we discussed at the last meeting. Do you want me to read it into the record? Because I don't want to do that. I'm hoping you just read it yourself.
Unless there's a need to read it into the record, I say no.
It's going to be on the website, right? So anybody who wants to look, they can look on the website.
Yes. All that is on the website, yeah. And I think that's all I had.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I only have one, where Jennifer is going to come and talk to you about different opportunities for fireworks versus drones. Sounds like a movie, right?
It does. Just getting ready for Independence Day, so looking at if there is a preference. We've looked at, and I've talked to some drone show operators. I sent you a couple links so you could see what we're looking at. But we were looking at other options that are environmentally safer, people that have pets, and to do something a little bit different that attracts a little more attention. So I just want feedback so I can get back to you with some procurement to go either way of fireworks or drones here in St. Pete Beach this year.
The links, the shows look great. I mean, how much did we budget for the fireworks?
$30,000.
And how much will the drone show?
It's about the same.
About the same.
Yep. It depends on how many drones you use. So if we give them that's our budget, that's what they have to work with.
The length of the show would be about the same as a fireworks show?
10 to 12 minutes. And the way it cost out was per drone, at least the companies that I've talked to, but there's other cities now that have done the procurement for it that I want to see what those numbers are.
I personally like the drone. Noise is an issue. People that have pets, I know there's some people that probably like to hear the bangs of booms, but
those are already going off.
They will
by
be.
individuals, yeah.
There'll be enough of those going off, so I think, I don't know, I would like you to look into it. I think it would be great.
Yeah, let's look into it so we can also explain it to residents. I mean, we did back in September of '21 approve about $187,000 to buy the mysterious barges that hopefully will show up someday.
Hopefully.
And part of our approval was we were going to use the barges for fireworks shows.
Correct.
So
Well, when they're not as barges, they are the floating docks at Egan.
Well, I reread the minutes. We talked barges and docks to use for replace existing piers, serve as barges for fireworks, buoy and waterway, sign maintenance, kayaks, and sport launching.
Correct.
So if we take away one of the business case for that.
It's not saying we'll never do fireworks.
And would they do a drone show off of the barges?
You can, but they can do them anywhere.
Where would they set up in a park?
Let's say if you did it at Upham, they set up in a small square area on the beach, and then it goes up and over the water.
Okay.
If you did them in Horan Park, they lined them up in Horan Park, they can get up and over the water there.
Or you could do them right in the middle of the island, which is
Yes.
the best place.
They do them in stadiums.
Yeah, I think we need to understand where and what the visibility is, because with fireworks, you can see them from far distances.
And that's part of the reason, too. I know I can stand here and do our fireworks, and I see Treasure Islands, I see Madeiras, I see Gulfports.
Right.
Because we all know when we do get feedback after shows, well, it's always over here, and I live over there, and I can't see anything.
It's never in the right place.
Right, it's
yes.
never-
Traditionally, it's always been around the 4400 block, the Gulf Boulevard, that's geographically the middle. If you go from the point of Paso Grill to Upland Beach.
It's been on the beach.
Yeah. Way back when we could do them, or up a barge. But that's been disrupted.
Well, and it's moved because we had skimmers.
Right.
We have sea turtles.
Right.
We haven't been able to do them anywhere by the county beach because the black skimmers have...
Right, or we couldn't get a barge.
Right.
Which is why we went...
Last time we did it, there was on a barge.
Barge is still in permitting?
Go back to County Park, right?
What's that?
With the drones, you could go back to County Park.
Yeah. That's just, I think it's always been done there only because it's equidistant, so at least it's about as fair as you can get.
Commissioner Bill, that from the north end of St. Pete Beach, I've never been able to see the St. Pete Beach fireworks.
No,
I can see the Treasure Island one's fine from my house, but I cannot see St. Pete Beach fireworks. Never have been able to.
Right.
No, let's find out, because I don't want to make that problem worse,
Right, yeah, I hear you.
potentially worse, and residents should understand, and we'll see what we get.
Would it be worth doing like a quick Survey Monkey thing we can post on the website before the next commission meeting and just give people an idea what it looks like and be able to vote and say, we'd like live fireworks, we'd like drones?
Yep.
Or we could say, we'll try drones one year and then see how the feedback is, and then next year we'll revisit it again.
Yeah, our last fireworks show didn't go well.
Right.
Yeah.
So I fear for that, too. If we would have done those from the beach, there would have been probably some injuries.
Bigger problem.
But since we did them on the east end of Corey where no one was, we dodged one there for sure.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, that's it.
Thank you.
Attorney?
Yes, thank you. Now that you all have made your appointments to the boards and committees, Matthew and I, in collaboration with the city clerk, we're going to be making our way around to them to do, our 15-minute presentation on code of ethics, public records, sunshine law, make sure that all of them understand that they are now local public officials and what that entails in terms of, separating that responsibility and your private life or activities and what you can and can't do. And, and if there are any questions that they can reach out to our office or to the city clerk's office regarding voting conflicts or anything like that. So we'll be, over the next, I'd say month or two, we'll be making our way around to those. So when you talk to your various appointees, maybe remind them about that. You're a local public official now, and there are, and you can always call me too.
Does that meet the state mandated course or not?
No. I think you all have to do your own. So I don't think they're not required to do their appointees, appointment boards. But the city has a whole chapter on code of ethics that is pretty thorough, and then of course sunshine law and public records is very important, and then even just basic, some of the for example, you can't be adverse to the city in any kind of administrative or legal challenge to the city. A lot of people don't know that. And you have to, there's just certain things that I think need to be reminded of people from time to time, so that, things are conducted in a way that enhances the city and then governance of the city.
Can't be married to a city employee.
Yeah.
Something that came up, I had to replace a board member.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Or quit your job.
Yeah, right.
How bad do you want it?
Who's making more?
Take your pick.
Right.
Free.
So there are
volunteer work or get paid work.
Right?
Divorced.
Anyway, that's it. So, but yeah.
Commissioner Moreau?
Very, very big weekend, very big Easter weekend in Paso Grill.
Yeah.
Especially Saturday was insane. I had a long conversation with Alex about our little discs that are on the ground, because they'll be coming up off of Gulf Way during the repaving, resurfacing, and our discussions were with regards to how do we know those things are even working, because if in fact people were using the app, why are 40 cars lined up down Paso Grill Way when there's no spots? And they take a right and then they drive it down Gulfway, and then they get upset and frustrated, and they fly down the side streets to Pascagoula Way and look for spots and get more upset, and then they find a spot that they think might be opening up because they see brake lights. So they stop and they wait. And 5 cars line up behind them, and those people get upset.
Yeah.
And they beat their horns, and then they finally say, forget it, I'll just park on the side street and I'll take my ticket. And so that was kind of Saturday that we had.
And I grew up in New York, and that's exactly a New York experience.
So we have a new walk over on 4th, reconfigured to adjust for our loss of beach. I think we're going to be addressing the visitor-created walk through of the dunes and the sea oats on 5th, because folks decided they didn't want to walk to 4th or 6th on the walkovers. So we're getting that taken care of. The Historic Preservation Board had a meeting last Thursday, which addressed, among many other things, the lights on Vina Bridge. And now the community is getting involved in discussions and potential selections of lights that they like, that work for everybody, that work for the turtles and the environment and everything else. So we'll probably see that at some point once it comes out of that board.
So, sorry, there was a problem with the lights on Vina Bridge?
They're ready to be replaced. I think they're just deteriorating. And then there's...
Most of them don't work anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no current product that exactly matches what they had, so...
okay.
So they're discussing different replacement opinions to... Yeah.
Okay, good.
On the parking sensors, is there an opportunity like you'll see oftentimes in parking garages where you pull in, before you even pull into the parking garage, so as you're coming over the Bayway, before you even turn south to Pascagoula, there's an opportunity to get one of those signs that says 500 parking spots available, or 500 total, and it's like 0 available, don't even bother going left if it's full.
Yeah, and we tried that during COVID, and people just...
Yeah.
They keep going. They keep going.
That's what I'm saying, is that we're paying for this app, and they're looking at it, and they're saying there's no spots. So are they going to turn around and go home?
I think they drive down there hoping they're going to find somebody pulling out and get in. That's what the hope is.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
I don't know how you stop that.
Commissioner Marone, I mean, I know there's discussion, but if you go back to the minutes for the last request to purchase additional ones, I made all the points that you made, I made them. And the motion passed. And we don't need to rehash it. The motion passed, but...
So I'm just thinking, as the resurfacing
Absolutely.
gets done, it may be another opportunity to revisit. I don't know how long the contract is, maybe another opportunity to revisit it. But
because
I bring it up for reporting purposes.
Because what we don't know is how many people are not going.
Right.
You know, some people are making a decision not to go, but we don't. But we got to figure out how to quantify that to put the value on it. Because you have 40 people going up there, but it could have been 140. If some people are, we know some people are looking at the app, right? We know how many hits it gets, so and we got to try to find a way to quantify that value.
It's hard to track the behavior.
Right.
And can we get the word out better that there is an app?
Yeah, the thing is that if you're coming in from Topeka, Kansas for the first time, you're not going to know that there's an app, right? The app really is used by the local people, local meaning St. Pete, Tampa, that are regular, beachgoers and everything else that follow, how busy it gets and everything else. How much does it change behavior? We're going to try to do a survey among those people to see how much behavior gets modified by that. And try to put a value to that. So
that's all I have.
Commissioner Frislowski?
Just a couple things. I know it was mentioned earlier tonight, but the Serrata is having their community workshops on Thursday, 2 of them, Thursday, April 13th, or the other option is Thursday, April 20th at 5:30 p.m. at the community center. And we are going to have a Town Hall District 3 meeting on Wednesday, April 19th at 5:30 at City Hall. So everybody is welcome to attend.
I think those community meetings are great. I found them particularly helpful.
The district, city, town halls, yeah. Yeah. Staff does a great job, and hopefully we get they've been a good turnout. I've gone to some of the, whenever I can go to the other ones, so I think, it's intended to kind of concentrate on District 3, but obviously everybody's invited. We had a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, they're very well attended.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Grote?
Couple items. Just wanted to remind everybody, or tell everybody, that April is National Volunteer Month. So I want to just take an opportunity to say thank you to all of our city volunteers, past and present. I know we've had some recent changes to some of our advisory board members. As a commission, we got that information there. So welcome to the new members. Thank you for stepping up. And thank you to those of you that recently received the letter informing you that some changes were being made. All of you, we want to thank you for your years of service. Please don't go away. We need you. We need people with institutional knowledge, and you never know when and if there'll be a future opportunity. So thank you to everybody. April 23rd to 29th, if you didn't know, is National Library Week. And it starts before our next meeting, so I wanted to raise it today and let everybody know that, remind everybody better know that we've got a great library here right in St. Pete Beach. If you haven't visited it yet, National Library Week is a very good time to find a reason to go, so don't forget that. It wouldn't be another meeting if I didn't express my dismay at the work that Duke Energy is doing around the city. This hardening project, I shake my head every day. We discussed the work and the undergrounding in the one particular neighborhood. That work plan slipped. It's now scheduled to complete by the end of this week. We're living with a half-pole environment. There's similar work happening just over here on 73rd Ave by the library. We're putting in new wider poles. We're going to live with a half-pole environment there, and it's very disappointing to see that by the library, because we just spent the last couple of years making that area beautiful, taking down the old house, fixing the parking lot, putting in the beautification, the side, all that great stuff that we did, and now we look at it and go, oh, great, now we have extra wires, extra poles. I've been calling Duke Energy with our contact. I've asked for a schedule on the half poles and when we can expect them to be removed. We've got some on the north side of 67th Ave. We've talked before. Duke Energy seems to be unaware. They don't have a report, a comprehensive report, but I will continue to contact our rep, and at a certain point we need to invite them in. I don't think we should tolerate a half-pole environment. I even saw a concrete pole chopped in half. I said, the wood pole, I got it. I don't know how they got the concrete pole chopped in half, left the old communication wires on it. So I'll leave it at that. We talked, there was some legislation, one of the speakers mentioned about legislation at the state level. From FLC, Florida League of Cities, I think we all are getting updates from them on different bills that they are tracking. There's some that are being looked at that could potentially have impact and big impact here at a city level, whether they're related to property rights or in property development. Financial disclosures for elected officials, full financial disclosures, forcing partisan politics, forcing every election to be partisan. So it will be interesting to continue to watch what the legislature does, and FLC continues to lobby on our behalf and everyone's behalf to maintain local rule and not have the state pull back decision-making authority from the local municipalities. But stay tuned, there's some very interesting bills. Last item I have is a reminder that this Saturday, the 15th, the Three Pumps Point neighborhood, the woman who was here earlier, is having their annual yard sale. So 8 a.m. starts bright and early. It will be nice weather, so come on out and look for bargains. If you're looking for a golf cart, I understand someone's actually selling a golf cart, but there's lots of other treasures to be found. Thank you.
Commissioner Graves?
Well, just real quick, nice segue with the golf cart there. We're seeing more and more golf carts out here all the time, as you probably realize, and This past weekend, we did have a little accident up on the north end of the island here where somebody actually rolled over their golf cart with 4 people in there. There was nothing super serious, but there were some injuries. A couple of people had to be transported to the hospital. So, just be careful out there. Those guys can only go so fast. Try not to push them. And if you're driving a golf cart, be careful taking corners. The things have a tendency to tip over. So, not a good situation. And then just one other thing. I don't know if anybody still reads the newspaper, but there was a really great interview in Sunday's Tampa Bay Times. They interviewed Michelle Gonzalez about the freebie.
Right.
And it was really reflected well on the city. And I just wanted to say to Michelle before she left, I think she did a good job.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really great interview. So anyway, that's all I have.
I did have one more item, just to thank the Parks team and Jennifer and the entire Parks team for our Easter egg hunt last Saturday. I was over there. It was extremely well subscribed. Lots of very energetic children looking for their Easter eggs and the golden eggs. And it was really good. The fire department came out and supported it. Plus, we had the event giving away free trees, so it was a great time. And the Sheriff's Office brought some vehicle that no one ever really knew existed, some armored personnel mover or something, and I told our fire chief that their truck won on Saturday, but anyway, but thanks, it was a great event. Really good. So, thank you. Sorry.
I get a lot of emails and phone calls, and I just want to say I appreciate all of them. And in fact, the more, community involvement we have, the more comments I receive from the community, like the freebie that we brought up tonight, there was just, 3-4 different calls and emails. So also want to remind everyone that we have mayor's office hours at the library the Monday before commission meetings, and we changed the hours on that. It's now from 6 to 7 p.m. to allow people at work to be able to attend those as well. So that's every Monday at the library from every Monday before the commission. So yesterday, and then, so that's all. All right, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.